Hey guys, and welcome to a new fanfic from the channel. Welcome to the first chapter of What if Naruto was Madara grandson and fell in love with Conan? As always, if you want more seasons or more seasons of other fanfics in the channel, just leave me a like, comment, and subscribe for more. So then, enjoy the fanfic.
Madara Uchiha. The world revolves around power and conflict. The most powerful people are usually the ones who cause the most conflict, but possessing greater power makes them admired by others. Peace, for many, seems unattainable in today's world. Everyone is selfish, and the world is governed by the principle that the strongest is above the weakest. This is how wars are decided. Everything is about power and the simple desire to be superior to others. Yes, human beings are so repugnant and so greedy at times, but what makes us witness two bodies lying in small puddles, one further away than the other, whose people were lying on the ground were Sasuke Uchiha, who had deserted Konoha in search of more power to achieve his goal. The other body belonged to Naruto Uzumaki, who had followed and fought against his friend to prevent him from making a grave mistake. The two were lying on the ground in a pool of water mixed with blood belonging to both of them. Both bodies appeared lifeless, neither was moving, and the rain only made the pool grow larger and push the bodies further. Far from the shore was a kind of plant resembling a carnivorous plant. The plant opened and a humanoid with half its body white and the other half black could be seen. Zetsu is what that humanoid calls himself. White Zetsu. It seems there was no winner. The white half said with a small smile, Black Zetsu. I believe that if the Jinchuriki had released more chakra from his Biju, he would have won. The black half said in a very sinister tone, White Zetsu. I think so too, it was certainly a good show. The white half said in a cheerful tone, Black Zetsu. This could be interesting. White Zetsu. What do you mean, Black Zetsu? Both are very strong for their young age, and that blonde-haired boy is also very skilled in the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and that technique called Rasengan is very powerful. Besides, don't forget who he is. On the other hand, there's the Uchiha who possesses the Sharingan up to 3 Tomo, and also Kakashi Hitaki's famous assassination technique, in addition to having Orochimaru's cursed seal. Said the black half in his typical dark tone. White Zetsu, I see. So you want to take them with him. Black Zetsu will take both of them. He'll decide who he'll use for the mission. White Zetsu, okay, let's do it. The humanoid plant emerged from the ground and then split into 2 parts. The black half reached Naruto and carried him, and the white half did the same with Sasuke. After taking both bodies, they buried themselves in the ground and disappeared without leaving any trace of their presence. Through the forest, leaping from branch to branch, the copy ninja, Kakashi Hitaki, moved about. In front of him was his guide dog, whom he called Pakin. Kakashi's face reflected only worry. He didn't know what could happen if Sasuke and Naruto faced each other in a duel to the death. Kakashi arrived at the place, the Valley of the End, where Pakin said Naruto and Sasuke were. Upon arriving, Kakashi began to look for his 2 students, but could not see them anywhere. Kakashi, Pakin, where are they? He asked, looking at his guide dog, Pakin. Well, the scent of both of them is in this place, but the rain makes it much harder to find them. He continued sniffing. Kakashi, I'll look along the river. They might be there, he said, then started running along the small river. Kakashi continued searching, but there was nothing. He knew that if Sasuke won, he wouldn't take Naruto's body, and if Naruto won, he would surely wait for his friends to return with them. That's why not seeing either of the bodies was alarming to Kakashi. As he advanced along the small river, he saw bloodstains on one bank near the river. Kakashi approached and saw the blood. Kakashi. Asterisk, what the hell happened here? There's a lot of blood. If they were both unconscious, the river should have carried them away. However, that would be impossible since this is more like a small puddle. It's not capable of moving 2 bodies. Besides, the blood is only here. There's no other blood besides this spot. Asterisk, he thought, and then he saw Pakin arrive where he was. Pakin. There's nothing, no matter how much I search for their scent, there's nothing. It's as if they've disappeared from this place. Maybe they both went away and the rain makes. Pakin couldn't finish because he started sniffing and caught the scent of one of them. Kakashi. What's wrong, Pakin? He asked, looking at Pakin. Pakin. This is the smell of Kakashi. What, Pakin? Sasuke. Pakken started running and reached a large tree, and there, leaning against the tree, was Sasuke. He was unconscious and bleeding heavily from his left arm and head. Kakashi was completely shocked. Sasuke's condition seemed to be almost on the verge of death. Kakashi quickly carried him. Kakashi, Pakken, can't you sense Naruto? He asked, looking at Pakken, who was sniffing. Pakken, no matter how hard I try, I can't smell him, he said, making Kakashi lower his gaze. Kakashi, okay, let's go, Pakken. He started running with Sasuke on his back. Location unknown. A somewhat dark den, illuminated by a few lamps, was located in a large chair connected to tubes that appeared to be channeling chakra. Seated in this large chair was a very old man with long white hair and wearing a robe. His only visible eye was red with those black tomo that are recognized everywhere. It was the Sharingan. The old man's face was completely stoic, reflecting no emotion, and of course, due to his age, it was impossible to tell from his face alone whether he was sad or happy. The old man gave a great sigh that reflected great despair and unease. His eye was fixed on his subordinate Zetsu, who was standing in front of him. White Zetsu. So the blonde one is the chosen one, he said, looking at the old man. Of course, I have no doubts, the old man said, then turned his gaze towards a bed where Naruto was lying. Black Zetsu. Even though the other one was an Uchiha, I thought only an Uchiha could continue this mission, the black half said in his dark tone. When I needed him, my clan turned its back on me, and the Uchiha I saved and trained has now betrayed me. I don't care if he's an Uchiha or not, but what made me make this decision is because I didn't want a puppet of that creeping snake. Besides, this boy is an Uzumaki. Without a doubt, he's the chosen one. Black Zetsu. Although it's true this boy has a lot of potential, there's something more to him. I feel a connection with that boy. It's like we have a very strong resemblance. White Zetsu. You think that boy has a connection to the great Madara Uchiha? He said with a cheerful tone and a big smile. Madara. And very strong. I'll find out soon enough, the old Uchiha said, then let out a small sigh. Naruto began to move, which caused Madara and Zetsu to focus their gaze on him. Naruto opened his eyes and was quickly met with a great headache. He also felt a great pain in his right arm and stomach. Naruto began to analyze the place where he was. It was a hideout, or rather a cave. It was somewhat dark, and Naruto was surprised by this, and memories came to his mind. Naruto, right, I was fighting Sasuke and then our attacks clashed and then I don't know what happened, he said while trying to remember what had happened. Naruto began to look at the cave and then his eyes focused on two people, or rather a very old mummy and a kind of plant shaped like a human. Naruto, huh? What the heck is that? White Zetsu, hello, he said in a very cheerful way, making a gesture with his hand. Naruto, hey, plant man, what the heck is this place? He said, looking at Zetsu. Madara, hello young Uzumaki, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto. H. The mummy spoke. He screamed and then fell backward to the ground. Madara, talking to Zetsu seemed perfectly normal to you, but you're scared when you hear me speak, he said, approaching Naruto, who was on the ground. Naruto sat on the ground and began to rub his head. Naruto. It hurts. Naruto looked up and saw the old Uchiha. Naruto. H. The mummy can walk, he screamed, causing Madara to hit him on the head with the handle of his scythe. Madara, can you stop yelling? It's irritating, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, ow. Hey old mummy, why are you hitting me? He asked with both hands on his head. Madara, Naruto Uzumaki. That's your name, right? Naruto, so how do you know my name? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, that's because I've been investigating you, and you were also wearing underwear with your name on it. This surprised Naruto and made him scared again. Naruto, you're a pedophile, you're a child-eating mummy. I have to escape from here. Naruto started running, however he didn't get very far because he felt a great weight on his body and his legs wouldn't respond. Naruto fell to the ground and then Zetsu stood in front of him. Black Zetsu. It's useless, you're badly injured, and besides that, one of your legs is almost broken. I'd recommend you stay on the ground. He spoke in his dark tone of voice. Naruto, damn it. I didn't feel this pain before. Now I can't move my leg. He thought while touching his right leg. Madara began to approach Naruto, looked at him for a moment and then smiled. Madara, you're probably wondering what you're doing here, right? Well, let me tell you that I saved your life so you could say I allowed you to continue living, and why? It's because I need you to do something for me, he said, looking at Naruto and making him look at him. Naruto, what should I do for you? Madara. That's right, it's a very important and dangerous mission, but saving your life gives me the right to ask you for a favor of this magnitude, he said, then walked over and sat down in his large chair. Naruto, TSK, it's not a favor if you ask it like that, he commented, looking at Madara. White Zetsu, you're right, but that doesn't matter, he said in his typical cheerful tone. Madara, well, I'd say this favor will end up being of great interest to you, young Uzumaki. He was looking at Naruto. Naruto, interested. Madara, can you imagine a world without pain, a world where there is only peace and harmony, where the world is one and there are no differences for any reason? Well, let me tell you that such a world is possible, he said, causing Naruto to be surprised. Naruto, is it possible? Madara, yes, of course, to achieve that you need someone who is completely determined. Naruto, I wonder if when I die I'll turn into a mummy like you? He said to himself, paying no attention to Madara or anything else in particular. Madara could only frown, and then he signaled to Zetsu, who hit Naruto on the head, causing him to start complaining. Madara? Are you stupid? Why the hell are you acting so ignorant? He asked, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I don't care what you say, old man. I'm going back to my village and my friends. Even if Sasuke left with Orochimaru, I won't give up, he said, then made a great effort to stand up and walk towards a wall. Madara, you can't get out of here. It's useless to try anything. He smiled, watching Naruto get into a fighting stance. Naruto created a clone, and then this clone began to move its hands around Naruto's right hand, and a blue ball of air began to form. The Rasengan was the technique that Naruto was executing. Naruto, watch me escape. Naruto slammed the Rasengan into the wall. The impact caused a loud sound and a lot of dust. When the dust settled, it was clear that the wall had a large hole caused by the impact of Naruto's Rasengan. Zetsu was surprised by the great damage caused by Naruto's Rasengan. Madara just watched this with his stoic face and then sighed. Madara, I must say that was impressive, however. Escaping from here is impossible. We're several meters underground, he said without looking at Naruto. Naruto, TSK. Damn it, he said while breathing heavily. Naruto created another clone and performed another Rasengan, then slammed it into the wall. The hole was even bigger and the wall was starting to crack a lot. Naruto was already feeling tired, and he fell to the ground sitting down. Black Zetsu, all you'll achieve is hurting yourself, the black half said. White Zetsu, I think you should go back to bed, the white half said, sounding somewhat worried. Naruto, no, I don't plan to give up. Naruto stood up and then began to punch the wall with both fists. Madara, at least you're very persistent? Or is it just stubbornness? He wondered with his eyes closed. Naruto punched the wall again and then stopped. His hands were covered in blood. Despite everything he had done, it didn't seem like he could get out. Naruto could no longer use his hands, so he slammed his forehead against the wall and began to hit the wall harder and harder with his forehead. Blood ran across Naruto's forehead and dripped down his face. Zetsu was shocked to see this. Naruto's hands were covered in blood, his right leg was wobbly, and his face was covered in blood. But despite this, Naruto kept hitting the wall. Zetsu turned around to see Madara, who wasn't looking at Naruto. Black Zetsu, should we stop him? The black half asked, looking at Madara. Madara, leave it. It will stop very soon, he said, still with his eyes closed. Naruto, HHHHH. He screamed and hit his forehead against the wall. Naruto took a few steps back and then suddenly fell to the ground. Zetsu approached him and saw that his head was covered in blood, as were both his hands. Without a doubt, Naruto was unconscious. White Zetsu, he stopped, Finally, he picked up Naruto and laid him on the bed. Madara, don't worry about his injuries, since he's a Jinchuriki. When he wakes up, I'll convince him to continue with my plan, Eye of the Moon, he said, opening his only visible eye. Black Zetsu, do you want anything else? Madara, yes, investigate everything about him. You'll have to infiltrate Konoha to get his information, so do it quickly. Once I know what I need to know, I'll start with his transformation, he said, then smiled. White/Black Zetsu, transformation? Both sides said at the same time. Madara, in order for me to develop the Eye of the Moon plan and eliminate Obito, he must change. In other words, before it all begins, he will have to die. He spoke in a very dark tone, surprising both Zetsus. You're an Uchiha. Naruto slowly began to open his eyes, immediately realizing that the talking mummy was not a dream. He sighed and realized that he was in the same bed as before. Naruto sat on the bed and then turned his gaze and saw Madara sitting in his chair. He seemed to be asleep. Naruto got up and then began to walk towards Madara. Naruto began to look at Madara. Without a doubt, it was a person, and a very old person. Despite everything, Naruto thought that he could have been a mummy, although it is not too far from reality. Naruto saw the scythe that was next to Madara's chair. Naruto picked it up, and when he was going to lift it, he felt a great pressure on him. He turned his face to the side, and there it was, that three-tomo Sharingan looking directly at him, and in such a terrifying way. Naruto swallowed hard and then put the scythe back in the same place and took about 3 steps back. Madara, are you feeling better now? Although I think it's obvious, after all, you're a Jinchuriki, he said, taking the scythe. Naruto, you know that? He asked in a very nervous tone. Madara, of course I know. I've been watching you for a while now, Naruto, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, hey old man, aren't you afraid of me? Don't you feel it's dangerous to have me here? He said while lowering his gaze. Madara, fear? Why should I be afraid? When you're afraid, it always makes you see things in a worse light. Besides, I chose you, not the Kyuubi or anyone else, he said in a calm tone. Naruto, I see. Hey old man, I'm very grateful to you. You saved me and didn't even treat me like a monster. However, I still want to return to my village and my friends, he said, then smiled. Madara, I certainly understand you. When Zetsu returns, I'll tell him to show you the way out, he said, then sighed. Naruto, really? Thank you so much, old man, he said in a very cheerful tone. Suddenly, Zetsu emerged from the ground, carrying some papers. He walked towards Madara and gave him the papers. Black Zetsu, things are getting even more interesting, he said in his typical dark tone. White Zetsu, very interesting, the white half commented, then laughed. Madara just looked at them and then began to review the papers. The first thing he saw was a man with yellow hair and blue eyes. This was the 4th Hokage, Kiroi Senko, Minato Namikaze, and below his picture it said, Father of Naruto. Madara was somewhat surprised. He already knew about Kiroi Senko. It was certainly quite good to know that Naruto was the son of such a strong and famous man. Madara switched to another leaf, and what he saw there left him completely surprised. And something else. Kushina Uzumaki was the name of Naruto's mother. Madara racked his brain to confirm that he wasn't mistaken, and of course he wasn't. That was his daughter's name. Zetsu noticed Madara's reaction. Black Zetsu, is something wrong? Madara, nothing. By the way, Zetsu, was there another relative? He asked, looking at Zetsu. White Zetsu, it's all we could find. There were a lot of ANBU and we had to hurry, the white half said with a big smile. Naruto, huh? Familiar? Umbu? What the hell are you talking about, aloe vera? He asked, looking at Zetsu, which made him angry at how he had called him. Madara, Naruto, did you ever meet your parents? This caused Naruto to look at him in surprise. Naruto, my parents? Well, I've never met them, he said in a sad tone. Madara, here. These are your parents. He handed 2 papers to Naruto. Naruto took the papers and then began to read them. Naruto's face quickly changed. At first, you could see a surprised face and then a sad face. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were the names of his parents. It made perfect sense. After all, the 4th Hokage was identical to him. Naruto, where did you get this? Did you go to Konoha? He asked, looking at Zetsu. White Zetsu, well, that information is only available in Konoha. Are you happy to have met your parents? Naruto, I don't know. It feels really strange. He said, looking at the photo of his father and mother. Madara, you could imagine that your father is the fourth Hokage. He said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I am the son of the fourth Hokage, the one who also sealed the Kyuubi inside me. He said while clenching his fist. Madara, your mother. Naruto, my mother. Madara, you know, Naruto, it would be good if you let me do a blood test on you. I want to check something. He said, looking at Naruto, who was surprised. Naruto, blood test. Why would I do something like that? What the heck do you want to prove? Madara, your mother may possibly be related by blood to the Uchiha clan. These words surprised Naruto. White Zetsu, wow. Naruto, hey. What are you talking about, old man? My mother is an Uzumaki. Look, it says so here. Besides, it doesn't say here that she had the Sharingan. He said, looking at Madara. Madara, that's why I'm telling you to take the blood test. It's to verify if it's true. Zetsu could do it. He said, looking at Zetsu. Naruto, so what? How will you be able to verify if I have Uchiha blood? Madara, because we'll test it with mine. He said, surprising Naruto. Naruto, now that you mention it, old man, you lived in Konoha for a while, you were in the Uchiha clan, so why did you end up in a place like this? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, well, I didn't just live in that village. I named it Kanehagakure no Sato, and I was also the leader of the Uchiha clan. He said in a calm tone. Naruto, hey, seriously, that means you were someone very important. And why did you leave the village? Madara, you still have no idea who I am. Naruto? Naruto, no idea. He shook his head. Madara, humph, you'll find out after you take the blood test. He said, increasing Naruto's curiosity. Naruto, okay, besides, that way I'll be able to find out if I really am an Uchiha, right? He spoke with complete determination. Kanehagakure no Sato, the Hidden Leaf Village, one of the 5 great villages, known for its incredible military power and great economic management. Konoha has always been a village feared for the incredible and powerful lineages it possessed. However, the village had lost its most powerful clan, the Uchiha clan, after it was exterminated by the rogue Itachi Uchiha. Konoha had also lost the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, after Orochimaru invaded Konoha. It was difficult for the village to recover from that. However, a new Hokage reigned with great authority, Tsunade Senju, one of the 3 legendary Sannin and granddaughter of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. The village was under a large gray sky, and although not everyone in the village knew it, they had lost a great shinobi, a great person, and this was what had 3 people gathered in the Hokage's office in a state of sadness. These people were Tsunade Senju, Kakashi, and Jiraiya. Silence was the only thing in that room. You could perfectly hear the sound of the wind hitting the walls and moving some leaves. Tsunade was sitting in front of her desk, Jiraiya was standing in front of the window looking towards the village, and Kakashi was standing in front of Tsunade. Tsunade, after a day-long search, we couldn't find anything. His body is nowhere to be seen, she said as her hair covered her eyes. Kakashi, Pakken said his scent disappeared because of the rain. I can't be sure, but Pakken smelled Naruto in the river and then he disappeared. He said, looking at Tsunade. Tsunade, it's likely the current swept him away. However, the Umbu team followed the river until they reached a small lake where the river ends, but there was nothing. Not even a piece of his clothes. Nothing. Kakashi, for now, all we can do is wait for Sasuke to wake up, and maybe we'll get something out of him. Tsunade looked up. Tsunade, I hope he knows something. You can leave, Kakashi, she said, then lowered her gaze. Kakashi looked at her for a moment and then saw Jiraiya, who was looking towards the village. Kakashi turned around and walked to leave Tsunade's office. Tsunade, this is so impossible. She clenches her fist. Jiraiya, do you really think he's dead? He said without looking at Tsunade, causing her to look at him in surprise. Tsunade, what do you mean? Jiraiya, Naruto is a Jinchuriki. But even if that's not enough, if Naruto really died, then where is his body? there's more to this. He continued looking at the village. Tsunade, you're right, but if he's not dead, where is he? Jiraiya, we're overlooking something very important. Akatsuki, he said, surprising Tsunade. Tsunade, they captured the Jinchuriki, you're right. But how did they know where Naruto was? She said, then watched as Jiraiya started walking towards the door. Jiraiya, I don't know. However, Itachi and Kisame were here a few days ago, and they're from Akatsuki. I'll investigate further and let you know. For now, it's best to wait for Sasuke to confirm whether or not he killed Naruto. He left the office. Tsunade looked at the door for a moment and then sighed, leaned back a little in her chair, and then tears came out. Tsunade, I wish I had your strength. I don't want to know you're dead. Please, Naruto, she said while trembling and her voice broke. Kakashi walked through the streets of Konoha, his face as stoic as ever. He paid little attention to his surroundings. He didn't need to, as he was quite certain of where he wanted to go. He continued walking, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, until he reached the memorial stone. Kakashi stopped and stared at it for a moment. Kakashi, *Ka. Hello, Obito. I liked coming here to talk a little about how things were going. But today I want to ask you to give me strength. Our sensei's son is missing. He looks a lot like you, and I don't want to think that he's dead. Help me find him. I know Naruto isn't dead, so I won't give up until I find him. He has to become Hokage. Kakashi knelt down and then ran his hand over his right eye, wiping away a tear that was about to fall. He clasped his hands together and then stood up, looking up at the opaque, dark sky. Location unknown. Naruto was doing push-ups, taking advantage of the time to exercise. It was clear he had been exercising for a while, as sweat was running down his body and he looked very tired. Naruto, CI 100. He said, then collapsed, completely exhausted. Madara, if you only do 100 sit-ups and 100 push-ups, you won't improve much in a short time. He said, sitting in his chair without looking at Naruto. Naruto, shut up. This is really tiring. How on earth does bushy-browed Naruto manage to keep exercising all the time? He thought, remembering his friend Rock Lee. Madara, for an Uzumaki you don't have much stamina, or maybe you don't eat well. He commented, then looked at Naruto who was running around. Naruto, the only thing I eat is ramen, that's what gives me the most energy. He said with a big smile and without stopping running. Madara, why don't you accept my training? You could become very strong. Naruto, no thanks, I already have a sensei, in fact I have two. And besides, I like to train my way. He said without stopping running. Zetsu began to emerge from the ground and then walked until he reached Madara's side. Black Zetsu, it's ready. Madara, where did you go? He asked, looking at Zetsu. White Zetsu, we went to some laboratories located on the borders of the Land of Fire. He said in a cheerful tone. Madara, Naruto, come here. Naruto stopped and then walked towards him. Naruto, oh, you finally arrived, aloe vera. He said while smiling. White Zetsu, I'm not an aloe vera. He said somewhat angrily. Naruto, so the results are here. He said, looking at Madara who was reading the documents. White Zetsu, also, aloe vera plants can't talk. He addressed Naruto, but Naruto wasn't paying attention. Black Zetsu, can you shut up? You're being annoying. The black half said to his other half. Madara, Naruto, your blood, compared to mine, which is Uchiha blood, has similarities, however. Naruto, what? I'm an Uchiha then? Madara, you are an Uchiha, but you should know that even though you are an Uchiha, your blood type will not always be the same, and you are an Uzumaki too, however, when the blood is exactly the same, that means you are an even closer relative. Naruto, what do you mean, old man? He asked, not understanding what Madara was talking about. Madara, you're not just an Uchiha. Naruto, you're my grandson. You're the grandson of Madara Uchiha. He said, surprising Naruto. The truth. Naruto. What did you say? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, just as you heard, you are my grandson and yes, I am Madara Uchiha. He said, looking at Naruto who was in shock. Naruto, Madara's grandson. Madara Uchiha. White Zetsu, you don't seem happy. Naruto, I have a family? But even so, you abandoned the village and that's something I don't want to do. Madara, it seems you only know a small part, Naruto. He leaned back in his chair and then let out a long, tired sigh. Naruto, a small part. Then why did you abandon the village? Weren't you supposed to protect it? He spoke in a raised voice. Madara. Yes, I left Konoha, but the reason I did so is because no one agreed with my plans to make the village progress. He said, looking upwards. Naruto, your plans. Madara. I gave my life to protect Konoha and I strongly believed in that village. I knew that to prevent the village from succumbing, I had to take care of any threat. That's why my clan and I decided to eliminate anyone who went against Konoha. I insisted that the right thing to do was to keep Konoha in power and thus dominate. I wanted peace, but many opposed my ideals. I thought Hashirama would understand why I did it. After all, he and I were great friends. Naruto. And then what happened? Madara. Upon receiving the criticism and total disagreement, I decided I had to remove Hashirama from the Hokage position. I orchestrated a coup, but it was too late. Not only had my great friend turned his back on me and betrayed me, but so had my clan, and just days later, the entire village was against me. I couldn't understand it. That village I fought so hard for. That village was my brother's dream. I only wanted the best for Konoha, and yet I received the worst possible reward. Naruto, it can't be. They did that? Naruto asked, looking at Madara. Madara. Currently, the world is hidden under a veil of tranquility, yet you have witnessed what the world is like today. I'm sure you must have suffered greatly. Madara said, then looked at Naruto. After my fight with Hashirama and after managing to survive, I went far away from Konoha. I reached a small mountain and there I fainted. When I opened my eyes, I could feel that warmth of being in a home for the first time. White Zetsu. And then what? The white half asked, very excited. Madara. Inside that small cabin was a woman. She had very long red hair, white skin, and very beautiful blue eyes. I knew very well that those features were very common in a clan called Uzumaki. At first, I was surprised. After all, the Uzumaki had made a treaty with Konoha. I wondered what an Uzumaki was doing in such a remote place. Flashback. Madara. Where am I? He asked as he sat on the bed. Madara noticed he was wearing a collar that was a little too tight. Well, you're in my house. I found you lying on the floor, you looked like you were dead. But I realized you were still breathing, so I brought you here. From your physique, I can deduce that you're a shinobi, however, you're not wearing a headband. Are you a rogue? Madara looked around and in a small kitchen stood a woman with long red hair, blue eyes, and very white skin. She was wearing a black skirt above her knees, a white sleeveless shirt with pink flowers on it, and an apron over it. Madara? An Uzumaki? What's an Uzumaki doing in such a desolate place? He asked, watching the woman approach him. Well, I was bored and also wanted to live my life away from being a kunoichi or a possible jinchuriki. And you? May I ask what an Uchiha is doing outside of Konoha? The woman asked, standing in front of Madara. Madara? I was Pa. Madara couldn't finish because the woman interrupted him. You should be more specific? What is Madara Uchiha doing outside of Konoha? Madara was surprised by this. He hadn't thought this woman would recognize him. Madara decided he had to kill her. She might say he was still alive, and that would only make things worse. Madara slowly began to move his right arm to try to grab her by the neck. You should be careful. If you move that arm a few more centimeters, you'll pull the thread tied to your wrist, and that will cause the poison-covered barbs on your collar to come out and fill your neck and airways with poison. The woman said with a small smile. Madara, so that's what the necklace is for. You could take it off. He said, looking at the woman. First you must wait for your wounds to heal. Now you need to drink some of this tea. The woman said, handing Madara a small glass. Madara, you think I'll drink that? You're very wrong. Take this thread away so I can leave. You'll drink it. The woman placed a kunai against Madara's neck and then began to squeeze, making Madara look at her and then smile. Madara, have you forgotten who I am? In a flash of speed, Madara snatched the kunai from the woman and cut the thread from her wrist. He put his hand on the necklace and destroyed it. Then he grabbed both of the woman's arms and laid her on the bed. Madara was on top of her and watched her for a moment as she struggled to try to get away. Madara, answer me. What is an Uzumaki doing in a place so far from Konoha or the village hidden in the whirlpools? He asked, looking directly at the woman. Hey, I won't answer you. Not while. Teach. The woman screamed as Madara's grip became even tighter. Madara. I have no problem killing you, however. I need to know why an Uzumaki is so far away from all the villages, and especially from Konoha. That's because I ran away, the woman said while still trying to break free from Madara's grip. Madara? Flee? For what purpose? He asked, letting go of the woman. I didn't want to continue with that clan anymore. I was fed up with their things. I just wanted a normal life away from everything that has to do with being a shinobi or being an Uzumaki. The woman said, then sat down on the bed. Madara, I don't understand. However, I don't care. That's your problem. I'll take some things like food, water, and some of your ninja tools, he said as he walked towards the kitchen. Hey, that's not yours, the woman said when she saw Madara taking her food. Madara, I suppose this is enough. Madara walked out of the small cabin and the woman followed behind him. What do you plan to do? Do you plan to leave me without food? The woman saw Madara for a moment, who was looking towards the sky. Madara turned around and saw the woman, who blushed when she realized that he had caught her looking at him. Madara, Uzumaki woman, I like. Madara couldn't finish because the woman interrupted him. My name is Akane, just Akane, the woman said, looking away. Madara, anyway, could you tell me where I am now? He asked, looking at Akane. Akane, you are in the land of rice fields, on the borders of the land of fire, she said, then walked over and stood next to Madara. Madara, so I'm still close to Konoha. I'll have to walk a lot further this time. Well, I guess it's the best I can do for now, he said, talking to himself. Akane, hey, stop acting like I'm not here, and I'm not letting you take my food, she said while crossing her arms over her chest. Madara, you are very annoying, Uzumaki woman. Akane, I already told you my name is Akane. Are you an idiot? The woman asked, causing Madara to look at her. Madara, I think I could kill you right now, but I won't. You healed my wounds and took care of me. I should repay you somehow, he said, making Akane blush. Akane, well, now that you put it that way, I'd like you to bring me a lot of money and also… The woman couldn't finish because Madara interrupted her. Madara, thank you. I suppose that's enough, he said, looking at Akane. Akane, you could have done it from the start, you idiot, she said, then turned around. Get out of here now. I don't think you're going to pay me much. Akane was about to enter her cabin. However, she decided to turn around to see if Madara had already left, and what she saw worried her a lot. Madara was lying on the ground, but his breathing was very fast and he also had a hand on his abdomen. Akane ran towards him quickly and then picked him up and took him to the cabin. After a few hours, Akane was sitting in a chair with her head resting on the bed where Madara lay. Madara woke up and recognized his surroundings. He sighed, glanced to the side, and saw Akane, who appeared to be asleep. Madara got out of bed and looked at Akane for a moment. Madara, I think it's time for me to go, he thought, then turned around and started walking. Akane woke up and rubbed her eyes, quickly realizing that Madara was no longer in bed. She got up from her chair and was greeted by a great smell that meant someone was cooking. Akane walked to the kitchen and saw Madara cooking. Akane approached a little. Madara, I see you're awake. Sit at the table. I'll serve your plate in a second, he said without looking at Akane. Akane, okay, she said, then sat down in one of the chairs at the table. Madara approached with 2 plates and placed one in front of Akane, then the other on the other side of the table. Madara sat down and began to eat. Akane just watched Madara in surprise. Madara, if you don't eat it will get cold. Hurry up, I say without stopping eating. Akane, why yes, she said, then began to eat. At the first spoonful, Akane was fascinated. It could be said that it was a very common meal. After all, it was scrambled eggs with small pieces of bacon and toast. However, it was incredibly delicious. Akane enjoyed every spoonful, finishing it all without leaving anything on her plate. Then she saw Madara get up and take 2 glasses and then a bottle of orange juice. Madara filled the 2 glasses and gave one to Akane. Madara, drink it. Drinking orange juice after eating helps keep your stomach healthy, he said, then drank his glass of juice. Akane drank the orange juice and then saw Madara. Akane, thank you for the food, she said, blushing slightly. Madara, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not the best cook, however I did. Madara was interrupted by Akane. Akane, it was so delicious. I mean, it's the most delicious food I've ever tasted. It was well made. She spoke, then lowered her gaze so Madara wouldn't see her blush. Madara, I'm glad you liked it, Madara said, looking at Akane. Akane took her plate and glass and was about to wash them. However, Madara took them away from her. Madara, leave it, I'll take care of washing them. Akane, but you cooked. At least I should wash them. Madara, don't worry. This is my way of thanking you for healing my wounds, he said, then began washing the dishes. Akane glanced at Madara for a moment and then smiled. Madara finished washing the dishes, then picked up a small backpack and walked towards the exit. Madara, I did a lot so you don't have to cook today. I also made some tea for you to drink tonight so you can sleep peacefully, he said, then left the cabin. Akane followed him. Akane, where are you going? She asked, making Madara stop. Madara, I already thanked you in a better way. Now I must go, he said, then started to walk away, but he felt someone take his hand and stopped. Akane, see, could you stay at least a week to fully recover? Besides, you don't have any money to buy food or sleep at an inn, she said with her head down, hiding her blush. Madara, I don't want to be a burden anymore, Akane, he said, surprising Akane because he called her by her name. Akane, you won't be a burden. Madara turned around and saw Akane, who was trying to hide her blush. Madara, okay, I'll stay another week, he said, making Akane smile. Akane, okay. Then you can prepare some other dishes for me, right? She said, taking Madara's hand and leading him to the cabin. Madara, you're a very opportunistic woman, he said, then gave a small smile. The Uzumaki and the Uchiha. Madara was sitting on the ground, his gaze lost in nothingness. A month had passed since he decided to stay at Akane's house. Things were going well and progressing. Madara turned his gaze towards the cabin when he saw Akane come out of it and walk towards him. Akane, I'll go to the village to get ingredients for food, she said with a basket in her right hand. Madara, you told me about that town a few days ago. Is that where you buy everything you need? He asked, looking at Akane. Akane, yes. The truth is I can only get vegetables, bread, eggs, and milk. You could never buy meat in that village, she said, looking towards the village. Madara, and how do you get meat or fish? Akane, well, it's up to me to hunt them down, she said with a tone full of pride. Madara, you yourself. So you go hunting too? That explains why you keep kunai, shurikens, and even swords. He spoke with a small smile. Kane, sure. Well, I'll go to the village now. You could catch some fish. I'd like to make kebabs, she said as she walked downhill. Madara, Madara turned around and walked until he entered the cabin. Akane had arrived in the village and was walking through it. She had a gentle smile and greeted everyone she saw. It was a very small village and its inhabitants were few in number, so it could be said that everyone knew each other. Akane reached a small shop and went inside. Akane, good morning, Mr. Mike, she said, checking the store. Suddenly there was a loud crash on the second floor, and then a short man with a big beard and a cowboy hat came down and walked until he was standing in front of Akane. Mr. Mike. Oh, good morning, beautiful and wonderful Akane, the man said while swaying his hips from side to side and with a slight blush. Akane, I've come for the same thing as every month, she said while looking at some apples. Mr. Mike. Okay, my beautiful beloved. You know, all this could be yours and you wouldn't have to pay me anything if you just agree. The man couldn't finish because Akane kicked him in the head. Akane, I already told you I won't marry you. You're a very perverted man, Mr. Mike, she commented, then continued looking at the apples. Mr. Mike, Well, it's not my fault, Akane. You're the one with those legs, that incredible toned but amazing breasts, and your beautiful red hair. So beautiful, Mr. Mike said, fantasizing in his mind. Akane, and that's why he's 55 and still single, she said, causing Mr. Mike to feel a sharp blow that snapped him out of his daydreams. Mr. Mike, you're beautiful but also very ruthless. Okay. Give me your basket, I have your things ready, Mr. Mike said, making Akane give him the basket, and he walked to a place full of vegetables and began to put them in the basket. Akane, by the way, Mr. Mike, could you please play double this time? She said with a small smile. Mr. Mike, double? Do you have visitors? Kane, you could say that. A very pleasant visit, she said with a slight blush that was noticed by Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike, don't tell me you found a partner? The man asked in an angry tone. Akane, what? No, it's just a… Mr. Mike? Akane. I don't know. Have you got my things ready yet? I asked, trying to change the subject. Mr. Mike, if they're ready, Mr. Mike said, glancing sideways at Akane. Mr. Mike handed him 2 baskets full of vegetables, bread, and a box of eggs. Mr. Mike, they're very heavy, be careful, Mr. Mike said, handing the baskets to Akane. Akane carried them without any problem. Mr. Mike smiled at Akane's strength and then wrote it down in a small notebook and put it away. Akane, your payment will arrive in a week, Mr. Mike, she said with a tender smile. Mr. Mike, don't worry. I'll only charge you for 1 basket. The other one is a gift from me, Mr. Mike said with a small smile. Akane immediately started walking up the small hill where her cabin was located. It took her about 10 minutes to climb up, and when she arrived, she saw Madara shirtless and preparing the fish with a kunai. Akane walked until she was close to him. Madara, you came back quickly. I thought it would take you a little longer, he said without looking at Akane. Akane, well, you could say it was empty, she said, then sat down in front of Madara. Madara, you brought a lot of vegetables and 2 baskets too. Didn't you just leave with 1? He asked, looking at Akane. Akane, well, the shopkeeper gave it to me. The reason there's so much is because now there's another mouth to feed, Akane said sarcastically. Madara, remember that it was you who asked me to stay, Akane, and it makes me really happy. It really does. Akane stopped when she realized what she was saying. Madara, being with you is calming for me too. It's been a long time since I've felt this calm, he said with a small smile that made Akane blush. Akane, Madara, I've always wanted to ask this, but tell me, Madara, what happened to your eye? She asked in a worried tone. Madara, I lost him in combat. That's the life of a shinobi, always risking their life and body, he said without looking at Akane. Akane, I see, Madara. Hey Akane, how are you going to pay for all this? Akane, well, since I'm the only one in the whole village with ninja tools, I give them to Mr. Mike as payment. I never knew what he used them for, but oh well, he accepts that as payment, she said while taking the things out of the basket. Madara, I see. Well, I think these are ready, he said, looking at Akane. Final flashback scene. Madara. During the time I spent with Akane, everything was so peaceful. I'd never felt such tranquility in my life. She was my partner, and I even forgot about being a shinobi and the entire world. I don't quite know how she did it, but she was able to make my mind clear of everything, Madara said, looking at Naruto, who was sitting in front of him, while Zetsu stood beside him. Naruto. So Akane is my grandmother's name? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara. Yes. Your grandmother told me 2 years after I met her that she was pregnant in a very joyful and exciting way. I must admit that I was excited too. I had even thought that I would never have a family, he said, then sighed. Naruto. And what happened? How did you end up here and my mom in Konoha? He asked, looking intently at Madara. Madara. I lived with her for 4 years, which seems short, but for me they were the only years of peace and tranquility I ever had, the only time I had such gentle and beautiful company, Madara said, then closed his eyes slightly. But everything simply collapsed that day. Flashback. Madara slowly began to open his eyes. The moment he opened them, he saw Akane putting on sandals. Madara saw that Kushina was still asleep, so it seemed strange to him to see Akane preparing to go out. "Madara, are you going to the village?" he asked in a calm tone. "Kane, yes. Take care of Kushina for a moment," she said, then approached Madara and kissed him on the lips. "Madara, okay, be careful," he said, watching Akane smile at him before leaving the cabin. Madara sighed and then sat on the bed. He saw Kushina, who was still asleep. Madara got up and walked towards the kitchen. He knew that if Akane went to the village, it was to bring food or sell her ninja tools. "I walked until I reached Kushina lying on a small bed that Madara had made." Madara smiled when he saw Kushina. He never imagined that he would be a father or that he would have a wife. Without a doubt, Madara was very far removed from what he had been in the past. Minutes passed until they turned into hours. Madara sat on the bed. He knew Akane liked to talk a lot with the villagers, but she had never taken this long. Madara put on a shirt and left the cabin. He approached and looked at the village from the hill and saw that there was no one there. No one was outside. It was very strange that the people were still asleep. After all, those people were always up from dawn. Madara entered the cabin and carried Kushina. He decided to go to the village. He had done it before, and the people knew he was Akane's partner. Madara arrived at the village, and the first thing he saw was that all the doors were open. He continued on his way, and as he went deeper, he saw what he didn't expect. There were many dead bodies, some without legs, others without heads, and all of those people were from the village. "Madara, Akane," he said, then ran with Kushina in his left arm, running until he reached Mr. Mike's shop. He entered the store and saw Mr. Mike's body lying on the floor, headless. Madara looked up slightly when he saw drops of blood falling to the floor and saw Akane with a sword piercing her and stuck high on the wall. Akane's eyes were open, but it was obvious she was dead. Madara took a few steps back at this sight. He heard voices that seemed to be coming from the house next door. Madara put Kushina in a basket and then walked over and entered the house. Madara walked very slowly, each step taken to try to assimilate what he was seeing. He reached the kitchen and there they were. 5 shinobi with a Konoha headband on their foreheads, and from the uniform they wore, it was clear they were Jonin. The shinobi turned around and saw Madara, and 3 of them were very surprised. "Shinobi 1. Tats. Shinobi 2. What's wrong?" Shinobi 3. It's impossible." Shinobi 4. "This isn't true." Shinobi 5. "What the hell is wrong with them?" Shinobi 3. It's Madara Uchiha," the shinobi said, surprising all his companions. Madara saw that one of them had a wound caused by a kunai and another had his Jounin vest damaged, which made him understand that Akane had fought for her life. The Sharingan activated and with it the hatred that blinded Madara completely. Madara charged at the shinobi and kicked one in the stomach, then ducked to dodge another's kick. Madara pulled a kunai from the shinobi's pouch and plunged it into his neck. He quickly snatched another shinobi's pouch and pulled out a tag. Madara stuck the tag to the shinobi he'd just stabbed in the neck and threw him against a wall. A shinobi approached to try and hit Madara, but Madara kicked him in the face, sending teeth flying and blood gushing out. Madara kicked the shinobi toward the one with the tag and then moved to the side to dodge another who tried to slash him with a sword. Madara broke the arm with a knee strike, disarmed him, and with a single thrust, severed his head. Madara threw the shinobi's body toward the other 2, and they exploded due to the tag. 2 remained, one of whom stood alone, trembling, staring at Madara. The other was unconscious from the kick Madara had given him. Madara slowly approached the Jounin, who was trembling uncontrollably. Madara looked directly at him, then in a flash of speed, appeared behind him and snapped his neck with a single blow. Madara didn't let him fall and grabbed his arms, placing his foot on his back and beginning to pull. The sound of bones breaking could be heard, and in a few seconds, Madara ripped the shinobi's arms off. Madara walked toward the unconscious man, approaching him until he was standing in front of him. He saw that the shinobi had regained consciousness. Upon seeing Madara, the shinobi began to despair. He was about to run, But Madara took 2 kunai from his ninja pouch and plunged them into the man's palms, pinning them to the wall. Madara drew a sword and saw the shinobi, who was screaming for forgiveness. Madara, I'm not interested in your complaints. Madara began making cuts while the shinobi screamed in pain. Blood covered Madara's face, hair, and clothes, and then he cut the shinobi's neck and with it, his head. Madara arrived at Mike's shop, then took Akane out and carried her, and also carried Kushina. Madara walked through the village covered in blood, with his dead wife on his right shoulder and his daughter in his left arm. Final flashback scene. Madara, after burying your grandmother, I walked with Kushina in my arms until we reached the village hidden in the whirlpools. I knew she would be much better off with the Uzumaki clan, he said while staring into space. Naruto, but why did my mother never awaken the Sharingan? And why did you decide to abandon her? Madara, I sealed your mother's Uchiha power and also… Madara touched his head. Naruto, me too? He asked in a curious tone. Madara, it was nothing. The reason I decided to leave her in that village is because I started to get very weak, to the point that walking became torture, and I ended up here sitting alone, living with memories. He said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, and you planned to stay here until you died? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, I was waiting for you, Naruto Uchiha. End of chapter. Everyone, I hope you liked it, and if you did, don't forget to vote. It helps me a lot to continue the story. Until the next chapter, everyone. A new Naruto. Naruto, me? He asked, looking at his now grandfather. Madara, yes, I always thought Kushina would have children, and I'm more than satisfied with the son she had. You're quite strong for your young age, but I think we can improve you even more, he said, observing Naruto, who had lowered his head. Naruto, did Konoha do that? He said in a low, very hoarse tone. Madara, do you find that hard to believe? Naruto, it's difficult for me. I never thought Konoha would murder innocent people. Madara, that's the ninja world, Naruto. Konoha, Kiri, Iwa, Suna, and Kumo, they're all the same. When these villages go to war, thousands upon thousands of children and innocent people suffer because of their lust for power. They don't care about killing a child if that child is from another village, even if they're not a shinobi or didn't want to be one. He said, watching as Naruto's expression grew darker. White Zetsu, and that's why Madara has a plan to end this. He commented in a cheerful tone. Naruto, a plan? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, yes, I want to end wars, death, and rivers of blood, the discord and divisions of the world. And if Naruto, such a world is possible to create. He said in a dark tone. Naruto, but how is that possible? He asked, somewhat curious. Madara, infinite Tsukuyomi. Naruto, infinite Tsukuyomi? He asked in a confused tone. Madara, infinite Tsukuyomi. It consists of a perfect genjutsu that is reflected on the moon and thus traps every living being in the world and puts them in a genjutsu, or rather a world where there are no wars or differences between anyone. Although to achieve that plan, great beasts are needed. He said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, beasts? Madara, yes, Naruto, before I spoke to you about this, 5 years after your birth, I asked Zetsu to watch over you and keep me informed about everything. I know everything you went through, however, I couldn't do anything at that time. I wanted you to grow a little more. Bringing you to this place was very complicated for several reasons, but the main one was because of your dream, Naruto. He said, surprising Naruto. Naruto, my dream. Madara, yes. Zetsu told me that your dream was to become Hokage so that everyone in the village could respect you. I decided not to interfere with your dream and did nothing, but I was always watching you. But after Zetsu told me you were going on a mission to rescue a friend, I asked him to keep an eye on you, and it's a good thing I did. Zetsu brought you here when you were on the verge of death, and I was able to heal you. I decided it was time for you to leave that place. You don't have to return to Konoha, Naruto, he said, handing Naruto a piece of paper from Konoha that said, Naruto Uzumaki. Status: dead. Naruto. What the? Madara. They already consider you dead. They didn't even go looking for you. A shinobi's body should never be abandoned. And they did that to you. How do you think the village feels now that you're dead, Naruto? That village is just a reflection of all the evil in the world. But they like to hide it behind their facades of heroes who have fought for peace. He said, making Naruto clench his fists. Naruto. All this time I thought I was in the best village. I thought it was the village of heroes. But, Madara, you and I are very similar, Naruto. We've both been through so much. I experienced the pain of war, you the pain of a village that should be your home. You endured the contempt and hatred directed at you. You and I desire world peace, not just the peace of one village, but the peace of the world. That's why I ask you, my grandson Naruto Uchiha, will you help me build that dream world? He asked, extending his hand to Naruto, who lowered his gaze and closed his eyes. Memories of Iruka, Jiraiya, and Team 7 flooded Naruto's mind. Everything seemed fine, but as if engulfed in flames, those memories burned away, turning to dust. Now, Naruto's mind was filled with memories of being beaten, treated like a monster, denied food, despised, and wished dead. The cheerful faces of those who once seemed to care for him had turned serious and judgmental with just a glance. Everything went dark in Naruto's mind, and then red eyes appeared, eyes that stared at him with a desire to kill him. Naruto's hand began to move, reaching for Madara's. Perhaps a part of Naruto still believed there were people who cared for him, but it was the hatred and resentment he had carried for years that made his hand move. Perhaps it wasn't even Naruto moving his arm, but the Naruto filled with hatred and resentment who had suffered so much for so many years. Who knows? Naruto's hand took Madara's. Forming, Madara smiled, causing Naruto to look up and see Madara. Naruto, I also want to change the world. What does it take? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, the tailed beasts, if I'm not mistaken, you have one inside you. You need all 9 beasts to revive the Ten Tails, and then you have to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki and use the Ten Tails power to reflect the Rinne Sharingan onto the moon and create the perfect world. He said while observing Naruto. Naruto, but the tailed beasts, do I have to capture them and keep them like that? Madara, not exactly. Have you heard of the Rinnegan? He asked, sparking Naruto's curiosity. Naruto, Rinnegan, sorry, I've never heard of that. He said in a serious tone. Madara, it's a dojutsu like the Sharingan or the Byakugan, but unlike those, the Rinnegan is the most powerful dojutsu of all. The Sage of Six Paths was able to create the moon with the Rinnegan. The possibilities are endless. The Rinnegan can revive the dead, in addition to granting unique and very powerful abilities. But above all, a Rinnegan user can summon a great statue called the Geto Mazo. This statue can absorb the tailed beasts and keep them sealed. You must gather the tailed beasts in order, from the 1 tail to the 9 tails. He said to a surprised but, above all, very attentive Naruto. Naruto, and where will I find someone with a dojutsu like that? Madara, there's already someone and he's in Akatsuki. Those eyes he has were mine, however I've implanted them in him since he's in Uzumaki, so you can continue with the plan. Naruto, so that's it. Huh, Madara, you should also know that when a Biju is extracted, the Jinchuriki dies instantly, and you are currently a Jinchuriki, so you can't continue with the plan while you are a Jinchuriki. He said, surprising Naruto. Naruto, so what will we do? Madara, you'll have to take a risk, Naruto. I couldn't extract your Biju, but we can do something different. Naruto, what do you mean? Is there another way? He asked in a curious tone. Madara, you know that to achieve and make our dream a reality, we have to take great risks. So why not start by taking one of the biggest risks? Naruto, but Madara, it's risky for you to remain a Jinchuriki while you execute the plan, since at some point you'll have to extract the Biju from within you, and that will lead to your death. However, if you wish to stop being a Jinchuriki now, there's a 15% chance you'll survive. He said, watching as Naruto looked surprised and clenched his fists. Naruto, you mean I should die? He asked with a somber look. Madara, in short, yes. He said without hesitation. Naruto clenched his fists even tighter. It was undoubtedly a 15% chance, practically certain death, and yet Madara, his grandfather, was urging him to take the risk. Perhaps this path didn't seem right for Naruto now, or so it seemed. Naruto had lived a life full of risks since childhood, with death always walking beside him. What was different now? Could Naruto risk dying without first creating the perfect world? No, Naruto wasn't going to die. That's what he convinced himself of. Without creating a new world, he wouldn't die. It seemed like determination, resentment, or perhaps destiny was driving him to take this enormous risk. Whatever it was, Naruto was going to take the risk, and there was no turning back. Naruto, okay. Do it, he said, a smile spreading across Madara's face. Madara. Zetsu, prepare everything. Today is the day a new Naruto will be born. White Zetsu. This will be very entertaining. The white half said in a very cheerful tone. Konohagakure no Sato, Hidden Leaf Village. Kakashi walked with complete tranquility, or at least that's what he showed. Kakashi was very worried about what he might find out today. Sasuke had already woken up after having been in the hospital for 3 days. Kakashi was heading towards where Sasuke was hospitalized. He arrived at the hospital and went inside. He asked the receptionist where Sasuke was, and after obtaining the information, Kakashi advanced until he reached the room where Sasuke was. Upon entering, he saw Sasuke sitting on the bed looking out the window. Sasuke, who had decided to leave the village and go with Orochimaru, was in Konoha in a hospital bed, and Naruto, who had gone after Sasuke to bring him back, was lost and with a high probability of being dead. Kakashi approached Sasuke and he turned to look at him. Kakashi, how are you feeling? He asked, looking at Sasuke's serious face. Sasuke, where is Naruto? Is this true? He said, handing Kakashi a piece of paper that read, Naruto is missing. Kakashi, you seem to be feeling better. And yes, this is precisely what I wanted to talk to you about, he said, then threw the note in a trash can. Sasuke, but how can Naruto be missing? He asked in an annoyed tone. Kakashi, that's what I want to know. What happened in your fight with Naruto? He asked in a serious tone. Sasuke, I didn't kill Naruto. If I did that Kakashi, I understand. You don't want to follow Itachi's path, you don't remember anything from that time? He asked, causing Sasuke to clench his fists and get out of bed. Sasuke, Naruto can't be dead, damn it. Sasuke walked out of the room, leaving Kakashi alone. Kakashi, he is also very affected, location unknown. Madara knew exactly what he wanted. He knew he had found the perfect successor, and above all, someone who would never betray him. Madara didn't know how long he would live, but for as long as he did, he would train Naruto to become a true shinobi and someone worthy of being his grandson. And if this was where it all began, the first step was Naruto's death. What an irony, right? However, that was the first step, and Naruto was more than determined to accept and face that risk. Madara, are you ready? He asked, looking at Naruto who was lying on a small bed. Naruto, do it, Madara. You are definitely my grandson, Zetsu, he said, making Zetsu raise a sword about 20 centimeters long with both hands. Zetsu buried the sword in Naruto's chest, causing him to let out a small groan and then clutch the bedsheets. Naruto spat blood and began to lose consciousness. He was undoubtedly dying, and the pain was unbearable. His heart had been pierced, and now he was on the verge of death, or perhaps he was already being claimed by death itself. Everything went dark, and the last thing Naruto saw were red eyes, the same ones he saw when he accepted Madara's plan. They were undoubtedly the eyes of the Kyuubi. Kyuubi, you damned brat. So you decided to end it this way. I curse you, brat. I hope my hatred stays with you forever and your life is filled with the worst possible misfortunes, said a very hoarse and dark voice. Madara, Zetsu, start now, he's losing a lot of blood, he said to Zetsu, who had created a clone of white Zetsu and combined it with Naruto's body. Black Zetsu, now Hashirama's cells. The black half said, then opened Naruto's mouth, opened a jar, and put everything inside into Naruto's mouth. Madara. Now we'll wait a moment. Suddenly, a red chakra emerged from Naruto's body, causing a strong wind and great pressure in the area. The red chakra took the form of a fox's head that stared intently at Madara. Madara, goodbye, Kyuubi, he said, and then his chakra disappeared. Madara, now Zetsu, stitch up his wound and stop the bleeding. Hashirama's cells will reach his heart and heal the wound. Being an Uzumaki, he'll have extra chakra that will aid in the healing process. He spoke, watching as the Zetsu clone that was inside Naruto's body emerged after stopping the bleeding and closing the wound. Madara placed his hand on Naruto's chest, and after a few seconds, he could feel his heartbeat. It was very slow, but his heart was pumping blood again. A clear cut could be seen on Naruto's chest. The scar remained, a scar that reflected a great change, a new Naruto, the beginning of a tough training. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, feeling a great pain in his chest and at the same time a great headache. When he opened his eyes and sat up in bed, he saw that in front of him was White Zetsu, who had apparently separated from Black Zetsu. Naruto saw that he was shirtless and his entire chest as well as his abdomen were wrapped in bandages. White Zetsu, I see you've woken up. How are you feeling? He asked with a smile. Naruto, it's a little strange, plus I feel somewhat weak, he said, then touched his abdomen. White Zetsu, he's not there anymore, you're no longer a Jinchuriki. Naruto, ever since I opened my eyes, I felt it. When I was a Jinchuriki, I could sense a presence or something inside me, but now I don't feel it anymore. He gets out of bed. White Zetsu, Madara will be happy to see you woke up sooner than expected, he said, following Naruto. Naruto, how long was I unconscious? White Zetsu, 3 days. While you were sleeping, you made a lot of noise, saying, I'll crush them. They're going to pay for everything they've done to me? Who owes you money? He asked, then smiled. Naruto, so that's what I was saying, huh? Naruto arrived where Madara was, as always sitting in his chair. Madara watched as Naruto approached, saw him stand in front of him, and then sighed. Madara, Naruto, I thought you'd wake up in at least a week, but as always, you're unpredictable, he said with his typical impassive face. Naruto, maybe it's the eagerness to start the plan, or maybe I am unpredictable, he commented, then smiled. Madara, you've changed a bit. You're much thinner, and your mustache markings have disappeared, he said, slightly surprising Naruto. Naruto, really? I can tell about being thin since I feel a little weak, he said while touching his stomach. Madara, it's only natural, a Zetsu clone is now bringing food, as well as water and clothing. He spoke before handing Naruto a scroll. Naruto, what is this? Madara, that's all you need to know about the Sharingan and its evolutions. You can read it while Zetsu arrives. After you eat and regain your energy, we'll begin training, he said, then watched as Black Zetsu emerged from the ground and approached him. Black Zetsu, things in Konoha are getting stranger or better, he said in his typical dark, raspy voice. Madara, what was said? He asked, looking at Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu, your friend, Sasuke Uchiha, is back in the village. Apparently, they found him in the Valley of the End. Naruto, so Sasuke didn't go after Orochimaru, he thought, then smiled. Madara, and what about Naruto? Black Zetsu, well, it seems that in Konoha it doesn't seem to affect him much, even though you're a Jinchuriki, he said, looking at Madara. Madara, that was to be expected. After all, they recovered their Kekkei Genkai. It's obvious they don't need you. On the other hand, I do need you, Naruto, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I think I'm really eager to start training, he said, changing the subject. Madara, if you can, why don't you start by releasing the chakra you have now? He said, causing Naruto to step back a little and begin releasing chakra. Naruto, what good will this do me? He asked while trying to expel his chakra. Madara, to make way for your chakra, Uzumaki. The Uzumakis have a great amount of chakra, and you, for now, seem not to have released all of that chakra, or perhaps you haven't even tried. Naruto, I see. Naruto continued releasing chakra, and as he did so, he began to feel the fatigue. It was clear he was in a very weak physical and emotional state. He needed to clear his mind of the doubts that still lingered there. It was still difficult for him to let go of everything at once. Memories kept surfacing, making it hard for Naruto to concentrate. He was already determined to change this world. The plan that Madara, his grandfather, had told him about seemed like the perfect solution to create that dream world. But was it really so? Was that plan truly perfect? Yes, Naruto had many doubts in his mind, and this prevented him from being 100% focused. Naruto sighed and cleared his mind. There was no other way. This world had already turned its back on him. He also realized how corrupt everyone was. Every village, even the Hokage themselves. The pain became palpable throughout his body, and it was to be expected. After all, he was releasing his chakra, and he didn't know if he would be able to release his extra chakra, so to speak, that gigantic chakra that the Uzumaki possessed. Naruto felt as if every one of his bones was breaking. The pain was unimaginable, but Naruto was going to endure it. There was no time to take a step back. He had to keep moving forward, and nothing was going to stop him. This was the first step and perhaps the most important. He had accepted the plan. Now he had to push his body to the limit, and that was what he was going to do. Black Zetsu, do you think I can do it? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, of course, suddenly, he felt immense pressure and brutal force. A strong wind. And as if there were an explosion, Naruto's body was enveloped in blue chakra, growing larger and stronger with each burst of power. The pressure was palpable, and it was clear from Naruto's face that he was struggling and suffering. But he was succeeding. The chakra that had been trapped inside him was now being released. Naruto felt his body begin to collapse, and then, suddenly, it stopped, the chakra ceasing to flow. Naruto fell to his knees, breathing heavily, sweat pouring down his face. Madara, it seems you have more chakra than an Uzumaki. This is certainly unexpected, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, hey. You mean I can release my chakra? He asked, then looked at Madara. Madara, yes. It's important that you know how to use this chakra very well. Now that you have released your Uzumaki chakra, I think we can begin training. Naruto, you mean this wasn't part of the training? He asked, a drop of sweat forming on the back of his neck. Madara, no. You'll start with physical training, and then the jutsus will come. Besides, you have a lot of chakra now, and you must learn to control it. It'll take at least 2 years, I think it could be less. It all depends on you, Naruto, he said, then gave a small smile. Naruto, I understand that means I won't have much time to rest and I won't be going out into the world either, he said while looking at his hand. Madara, I already told you, Naruto, it all depends on you. Besides, you haven't awakened the Sharingan yet, but it's only a matter of time before you do, he said, then looked to the side and saw Zetsu emerge from the ground with a large bag which he threw to the ground. Inside were many foods, mostly vegetables and fruits, many bottles of water, and about 3 ninja outfits. Madara, Naruto, you can start eating if you want. You can start with fruit, he said, making Naruto look at him with an angry face. Naruto, hey Zetsu, where the heck is my ramen? He asked, looking at the white Zetsu clone. White Zetsu, Madara told me to prioritize fruits and vegetables, he said in his typical cheerful tone. Madara, it's better to eat a balanced diet. Eating only ramen will make you feel much heavier and training will be much harder. Naruto approached and took an apple and sat down in front of Madara. Naruto sighed and then began to eat the apple, reached for a water bottle and sat back down normally. Madara, Naruto, there's something I need to tell you, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, yes, tell me, Naruto said without stopping eating. Madara, there is someone else within Akatsuki who is following this plan on my direct orders, however, that was before, now he is no longer on my side. A few years ago he betrayed me and decided that I should develop the plan only for his own benefit, he said, remembering Obito in his mind. Naruto, who? Madara, first, concentrate on your training, Naruto. After you've improved enough, I'll tell you who it is. As you know, the only way to deal with him is by eliminating him. Naruto, okay, I think I'll eat some more things and then start training, he said, then ate a lot of apples and grapes. Konohagakure no Sato, Hidden Leaf Village. Konoha was having one of its sunny days, a fairly normal day in Konoha. Businesses continued to function, People continued with their same routine and everything seemed to be fine and as it had always been, but not for everyone is a normal day, and one of them is Shikamaru, who was looking towards the sky, lying on the ground with his hands behind his head. Many things were going through Shikamaru's mind, and all of them had to do with the same person, whom he considered one of his best friends and with whom he shared many moments, especially when they were children. Shikamaru always saw Naruto as a normal boy, someone who just wanted friends and to be accepted, who wanted to play but never had anyone to play with. Shikamaru witnessed how cruel Naruto had been and everything he went through, but Shikamaru always saw Naruto as a friend, not a beast or a monster as others said. No, Shikamaru saw a friend who would always be there and would never turn his back on him for anything in the world. Shikamaru's mind was flooded with memories of that annoying and troublesome Naruto, how he didn't care about shouting his dream to everyone. Shikamaru thought that perhaps he had made a mistake during the mission to bring Sasuke back and believed that was why Naruto had died. Even though it was said that he was missing, the truth was that Shikamaru knew that Naruto was dead. It was the most logical thing. Shikamaru looked up and saw Sasuke sitting on a dock. Shikamaru sighed and then saw tears falling into the water. He saw that Sasuke was crying. Shikamaru guessed that perhaps he already knew about Naruto's disappearance. He decided to stay where he was, lying down and watching the clouds. As Shikamaru watched the clouds, tears almost involuntarily came out, forcing Shikamaru to wipe them away. Hokage Tower. In the Hokage Tower, more specifically in the office, were Tsunade, Shizune, and Kakashi standing in front of them. Tsunade, the reason I called you is because I have a 3-year journey planned for you. Kakashi, she said with her arms crossed, looking at Kakashi. Kakashi, so everything will go back to normal again? He asked without looking at anyone, almost as if he wanted to think it and not say it. Tsunade, things need to move forward. Kakashi, you'll be going with Sasuke on a 3-year training journey. You'll leave in a week. You can start preparing everything and also talk to Sasuke. I'll also call Sasuke to tell him everything, she said, then got up from her chair and stood in front of the window looking at the village. Kakashi, I understand. Is that all, Hokage-sama? Tsunade, Shizune, Kakashi-kun, you may leave, that's all, she said with a small smile. Kakashi saw Tsunade for the last time, who kept looking at the village. She was undoubtedly trying hard to hide it. She didn't want to fall apart and abandon the village. Despite going through a very difficult time and feeling devastated, she acted with her usual attitude and determination to move forward for the good of the village. Kakashi left the Hokage's office. Shizune, Lady Tsunade, everything is all right, right? She asked, looking at Tsunade, who was still looking at the village. Tsunade, in the village, yes, that was all Tsunade said before sitting back down and, without complaining or anything, began the paperwork. The Sharingan. Naruto was fighting a large number of white Zetsu clones. His lack of maturity and certainty in taijutsu was evident. Despite being intelligent and using clones for easier combat, he lacked speed, audacity, and strength. Naruto was no prodigy, and Madara, who was sitting in his chair observing him, realized this. Even so, Naruto possessed something unique, a great will and a voracious desire to improve himself. Madara rattled his scythe, causing Naruto to stop. Naruto's and Zetsu's clones disappeared, and then Naruto began walking towards Madara. Naruto, and now what? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, I don't recall telling you to use clones. If you don't eliminate Zetsu's clones without the help of clones, then you won't advance far enough. Naruto, I feel pain in my chest. My body feels heavy too, he said, moving his arms. Madara, that's why I told you to focus on training your physique before your skills. The first few days are just a warm-up, Naruto, he said, then sighed. Naruto, TSK, it's hard for me to concentrate if you don't let me eat my ramen, he said, then sat down on the floor. Madara, stop thinking about ramen and concentrate. Have you read the scroll I gave you? He asked, looking at Naruto, who sighed. Naruto, yes. Although there are some things I struggle to understand. To obtain the Manjikyu Sharingan, is it necessary to watch someone you care about die? He asked, looking down. Madara, a very corrupt way to acquire power, don't you think? The Manjikyu is the second stage of the Sharingan. When you obtain your Manjikyu, you have access to great power. Each user has a different design and thus awakens different powers. The only power that all Manjikyu users share is the Susanoo. He said, causing a surprised look on Naruto's face. Naruto, it's incredible. I was reading about this thing called Susanoo, and I found it interesting that it's a spiritual humanoid that protects you from any attack. However, being the last great jutsu acquired through the Manjikyu Sharingan, it must come at a very high cost. He spoke without looking at Madara. Madara, the Susanoo has many transformation stages, and in its early stages, destroying the defense shouldn't be a problem, provided you have immense strength. The Manjikyu Sharingan comes at a great cost, Naruto. Acquiring great power always comes at a great price, and the Manjikyu Sharingan is no exception. He explained, causing Naruto to look at him. Naruto, in the scroll I read about several Uchiha who lost their sight after using the Manjikyu Sharingan. He said, looking at Madara. Madara, exactly. That's the price for using the Manjikyu Sharingan. However, there is a way to avoid blindness, and that is by reaching the final stage of the Sharingan, the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. He said, causing Naruto to lower his gaze. Naruto, another corrupt way to acquire power. He commented with his head down. Madara, well, it's not surprising, the Uchiha clan has always been a very corrupt clan, and the way they acquire power proves it. Naruto, what do you say about Izanagi? Is it really capable of outsmarting even death itself? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara, Izanagi is a genjutsu capable of eliminating the boundaries between reality and illusion. You could say this genjutsu is capable of controlling your own existence. There is also Izanami, a genjutsu that affects the five senses. However, when you use it, you lose an eye just like with Izanagi. It could be described as the loss of a light. This genjutsu defines destiny. Naruto. In other words, with Izanagi you're able to change your destiny, although it's very clear that it can only be used for a few moments and you must also sacrifice an eye to use it. And with Izanami you can define what the person under this genjutsu will do, manipulate that person's destiny. He said, then touched his right eye. Madara, not exactly, but you're not that far off. The Sharingan could be considered the most powerful dojutsu due to its various stages and jutsus, and it's clear that the Sharingan surpasses even the limits of what is believable. Even so, the price for using and evolving the Sharingan is very high. He said while observing Naruto, who had stood up. Naruto, I still find all this Sharingan stuff very interesting. I'd also like to know more about the Rinnegan. You say it's the most powerful dojutsu, and if you say so, it must be true. He spoke before walking away from Madara. Naruto picked up a kunai from the ground and then threw it, hitting a poster that had his picture on it and said, Status. Dead. Origin. Konohagakure no Sato. Location unknown. How difficult it is for a shinobi when you take away their ability to perform jutsu. It must be the greatest punishment, especially for those who aspire to know and practice everything. This is the case of Orochimaru, the snake Sannin and one of the greatest and most dangerous criminals in the ninja world. Inside his lair, seated in a chair that had a snake headpiece, he watched his right-hand man in his corrupt schemes, Kabuto Yakushi. Kabuto, Lord Orochimaru, everything indicates that Sasuke has returned to Konoha, and the Sound Five are all dead, including Kimimaro. He said, kneeling before Orochimaru. Orochimaru, I can't believe it all ended like this. I thought Sasuke would come to me. After all, he only desires power. He said with a hint of annoyance in his voice. Kabuto, I understand that a rumor related to Naruto is spreading in Konoha. He said, looking at Orochimaru. Orochimaru, the Jinchuriki of the Fox. Does he have anything to do with Sasuke's return to Konoha? Kabuto, it's true that Naruto, along with 4 others, went on the mission to bring Sasuke back. However, rumors are circulating that Sasuke Uchiha returned to Konoha, but Naruto Uzumaki did not. He said, causing Orochimaru to look somewhat surprised. Orochimaru, what do you mean, Kabuto? How come Sasuke returned and Naruto didn't? Is Naruto dead? He asked, looking at Kabuto. Kabuto, well, it's Konoha. They say he's missing, but everything indicates that he's dead. He said, then adjusted his glasses. Orochimaru, well, that's interesting. So Konoha has lost its Jinchuriki, he said with a smile on his face. Kabuto, this is a great opportunity to crush Konoha, don't you think, Lord Orochimaru? He said with a small smile. Orochimaru, however, Sasuke is still in Konoha. Tsunade is Hokage, and Jiraiya is always near Konoha. I can't perform any jutsu right now, and going there would just be taking a risk, he said, looking at his arms. Kabuto, but we can use this information from Naruto to lure another village to Konoha. I'm sure Kumo would love to know this, he said, looking at Orochimaru. Orochimaru, Kabuto, you still need to understand something, and that is that I will be the one to crush Konoha. Although your idea isn't bad, it's only a matter of time before the rumor that Konoha lost its Jinchuriki starts to reach the ears of the other villages. With Konoha at war, it will be much easier to get to Sasuke-kun. Once I obtain that body and those marvelous eyes, there will be no one in the world capable of stopping me. He spoke, then stuck out his tongue. Kabuto, as always, you've come up with an excellent plan, Lord Orochimaru, he said, then smiled. Orochimaru, not even Itachi-kun can stop me, nor can you stop me, you liar Madara, he thought with a sadistic smile. Konohagakure no Sato, Hidden Leaf Village. A calm atmosphere hung over Konoha. Rumors of Naruto's disappearance were spreading, which was to be expected. Naruto always made himself known, and the villagers were used to it. For a few, the news had been devastating, to say the least. Despite everything, there were a handful of villagers who cared about Naruto. Mr. Tucci and his daughter Ayame were prime examples. Naruto often visited their small ramen stand, always saying that Ichiraka's ramen was the best. Irika, too, was deeply affected. Since hearing the news, he had changed drastically. He struggled to accept it and, consequently, shut himself away in his house. He didn't want to hear anything about it. For him, it was impossible to accept that Naruto was missing, much less that he was dead. Naruto was like a son to him, and he never imagined something like this could happen to him. Irika knew that Naruto would never abandon his village, so the rumors of his disappearance were false. Irika was trying to cope with all the pain, but it was very difficult. You could see in his eyes how hard it was for him. He was walking through the streets of Konoha with his head down and his hands in his pockets. He stopped when he felt someone standing in front of him. Irika looked up and saw Kakashi. Kakashi, hello Irika, he said, looking at Irika. Irika, hey Kakashi, how's it going? I heard you were going on a training trip with Sasuke, he said in a very low voice. Kakashi, okay, what if we leave next week? He said, then gave his typical smile. Although you can't see it because of the damn mask he wears hiding his perfect and well-detailed face. Sorry, I got carried away. It's just that Kakashi makes me doubt my heterosexuality. Irika, TSK, I can't believe you say you're okay when Naruto is… Irika couldn't finish because Kakashi interrupted him. Kakashi, I know. It's difficult for me, but Naruto would hate to see me depressed all the time. Life goes on, and that's something we have to accept. Irika, it's just as hard for me, but you, more than anyone, should understand how disappointed Naruto must be right now, he said, then walked past Irika and started to walk away. Irika clenched his fists and then looked up at the sky. It was strange. Ever since Naruto disappeared or died, the sky has always been gray, something very strange and at the same time very significant. Sasuke was in his room, the room the third Hokage had given him. He sat on his bed, staring into space. Sasuke didn't want it to end like this. He didn't want that to happen to Naruto. He realized the steps he was taking. He didn't want to be like his brother and gain power that way. However, his decision to leave Konoha ended with the certain death of his only friend. Sasuke realized he was making a bad decision. He understood that the path he wanted to take only affected those he cared about. He knew Naruto wanted to be Hokage, and now that dream would never come true. Now he was truly alone. That's what Sasuke thought, even though he knew Sakura and Kakashi were still there. But Naruto was his closest friend. Sasuke felt some guilt over Naruto's death. He repeated to himself every day that he hadn't killed Naruto. He wanted to convince himself of that, but it was very difficult. Everything seemed to indicate that Naruto had died in their fight. Sasuke glanced to the side and saw the photo he had of Team 7. Sasuke, Naruto, forgive me, friend, time skip, 5 months later. Location unknown. Naruto jumped, opened his right hand and took out 5 kunai. Naruto threw 4 of them, which hit different targets. Naruto spun in the air and landed on his feet. About 6 Zetsu clones each threw 3 shurikens at Naruto from different places. With the kunai he had in his hand, Naruto began to deflect each and every one of the shurikens. He deflected the last shuriken and then threw his kunai, which stuck in the forehead of one of the Zetsu clones. The 5 remaining Zetsu clones ran towards Naruto, who stood waiting for them. One of the clones tried to hit Naruto, however he ducked to dodge the blow and then jumped back, dodging another attack from Zetsu. As he landed on his feet, Naruto propelled himself forward and connected with a knee strike to the face of one of the clones. He placed both hands on the clone's face to hold on and spun around, kicking the rest of the clones. Naruto jumped back and made hand seals at great speed. Fire style, Fireball Jutsu, Naruto said, unleashing a huge fireball that obliterated all of Zetsu's clones. Madara, wow, you finished them off much faster this time, he said, sitting in his chair and watching Naruto. Naruto, this is nothing anymore. Naruto turned to look at Madara. Naruto had a 2-tomo Sharingan in each eye, and his hair had grown a little longer. Madara, his progress is going very well. I suppose not anymore, he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I need a tougher challenge than this, something that will be a little more fun, he said, then deactivated his Sharingan. Exit to the outside. Konohagakure no Sato, Hidden Leaf Village. The village of Konoha, proclaimed the most militarily powerful of the 5 great villages, had recently lost a significant portion of its strength after losing the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Konoha's military power declined, though this information is not yet public knowledge and unknown to the villages at odds with Konoha. Villages like Kumogakure and Iwagakure would kill for this information. Within the village, the loss of a weapon like Naruto was already alarming for some. It might sound harsh, but the truth is that the Jinchuriki grants the advantage of possessing and greatly increasing military power. On the other hand, there were those who mourned Naruto's loss not because he was the Jinchuriki, but because he was a friend, a boy full of dreams and goals that would never be fulfilled. Tsunade saw in Naruto her deceased brother Nawaki and her deceased boyfriend Dan. The 3 shared the same dream, and all 3 spoke of it with such fervor that it almost made you think they were crazy. For a moment, Tsunade believed that Naruto would be the one to carry the dreams of her brother Nawaki and her boyfriend Dan, just as she had. That necklace, what was it about it? It had already taken 2 loved ones from her, and now it had taken 1 more. How cruel and cynical life can be sometimes. Tsunade leaned back in her chair. She had a lot of paperwork in front of her, and above all she had a great headache, perhaps caused by the amount of papers. She sighed and then saw that the door to her office opened and whoever entered caused Tsunade to frown. Danzo Shimura, Koharu Yuditane, and Hamura Mitokado were the people who entered Tsunade's office. They are also part of the Konoha Council. Tsunade, I didn't summon you, she said with a serious face, looking at the 3 old men standing in front of her. Hamura, we don't need any permission to talk about this situation, the old man said, looking at Tsunade. Koharu, that's right. We're very disappointed with your latest decision, the old woman said in a tone that reflected annoyance. Hamura, you have made a decision that has affected the village in the short and long term. There is no excuse for it. Danzo, sending 4 genin and a newly appointed chunin to rescue the Uchiha who had been captured by Orochimaru's soldiers. You lost the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, but the only thing in your favor is that you were able to recover the Uchiha. So I don't understand the decision to send him on a 3-year training journey with Kakashi Hatake, he said with his typical impassive face. Tsunade, I've made my decision and I take full responsibility for Naruto's death, which, by the way, is his name in case you didn't know, she said with a serious face and a slightly raised voice. Koharu, what will you do if this information reaches other villages? She asked, causing Tsunade to stand up from her chair. Tsunade, for now, Naruto is missing and I've decided to keep it that way. No village can find out about it, and if they do, it's because someone here informed them. She said, looking at the elders of the council. Hamura, what are you implying? Tsunade, you heard me. So now get out of my office and let me get on with my work. She said, then sat back down in her chair. Danzo, the best decision was to give the Uchiha to me, and I would train him to become a soldier who serves and protects the village. He said, opening his single eye. Tsunade, Sasuke is on a 3-year training journey with Kakashi, and they are being watched over by Jiraiya. Furthermore, it was a decision made by me, and that's all you need to understand. She said, then took a piece of paper and began to review it. The old council members left Tsunade's office. They were part of the council, however, the Hokage was the highest authority in the entire village, and they couldn't control him, especially someone like Tsunade. This was something Danzo understood very well. Danzo would remain in the shadows and wait for something to happen that would ultimately condemn Tsunade, thus allowing him to become the next Hokage and transform Konoha into the most powerful village of all. Danzo was going to make sure that happened. Tsunade sighed and leaned back in her chair. Undoubtedly, the visit from those old men had only served to give her more of a headache. However, Tsunade knew one thing. She had made a bad decision. Sending the 4 genin and a newly appointed chunin was certainly not a good idea. At the very least, she should have sent Kakashi or another jonin with them. Above all, sending Naruto just to fulfill her whim of bringing her friend back was a very bad decision. And as expected, the consequences were very serious. Tsunade felt guilty and, above all, felt she had failed as Hokage. But she didn't have time to regret and live traumatized by her decision. The village needed to keep moving forward and, above all, maintain its status. She didn't want to disappoint Kawaki and Dan, nor Naruto. She had taken on this role knowing how difficult it would be given the village's situation, so she didn't have time for regrets. Despite being devastated, she would continue fighting for her village. That was the Hokage's responsibility, after all, and she knew it. Location unknown. For some shinobi, giving them 5 months of training is a lot of work if you ask them to improve their skills to a high level, especially if you make them start from scratch. But that only happens to some. Naruto may or may not be the exception. Naruto isn't a prodigy, but the boy has great talent. Raw effort brings great rewards. After all, talent only makes things easier. Sometimes, striving and fighting with great determination for a goal allows you to surpass even the most talented of all, and that can only be achieved with conviction and effort. Naruto had progressed a lot in just 5 months. Naruto wanted to be very strong and, above all, to surpass what he believed were his limits, and he had achieved it. Unimaginable pain and such exhausting training had led him to suffer so much, but above all, to surpass himself in a great way. Right now, he was training his body with a large number of abdominal exercises. He was wearing only short shinobi pants and black shinobi boots, shirtless, and with weights strapped to his feet and arms. Naruto, 552. Naruto got up with great effort, took several breaths that reflected exhaustion, and then got down again and continued like this about 20 more times, then got up and started running while dodging the shurikens that Zetsu's clones threw at him. He ran at great speed and then jumped and connected a punch on the wall, causing many cracks and leaving the mark of his fist on it. Naruto landed on his feet and then made hand seals at great speed. Naruto Fire Style, Dragon King Scales Jutsu. He said, then expelled small fireballs the size of shuriken that struck various targets and burned them explode. As he said this, all the small fireballs that hit the targets exploded. Naruto sighed at this and then saw Zetsu, who understood Naruto's sight, and threw a katana to Naruto, who caught it and began to make cuts, making the katana dance in a fairly advanced way. It could be seen that Naruto liked Kenjutsu. Naruto threw the katana to the ground and then returned to making hand seals at great speed. Naruto Fire Style, Deadly Incendiary Jutsu. He said, then expelled a large fireball that went towards 7 Zetsu clones who were just standing there. When the fireball touched one of the Zetsu, it exploded in a huge blast, causing a great roar and turning the Zetsu to dust due to the devastation of the fire jutsu. White Zetsu. Incredible, this time you did it much faster and you didn't even use the Sharingan. He said in a cheerful tone. Naruto, you think so? I think it can be done much faster. He said, then lifted the katana and gave it to Zetsu, who took it and began walking beside Naruto. Naruto, and where's Black Zetsu? He asked, looking at Zetsu. White Zetsu. He's outside gathering information about what's happening with Konoha and Akatsuki. He said, walking beside Naruto. Naruto, I see. And what happened to what I asked you for? He asked without looking at Zetsu. White Zetsu. Well, I've been looking, but I haven't been able to find a ramen restaurant. Naruto, TSK. I guess it can't be helped. Naruto and Zetsu walked until they reached where Madara was sitting. Naruto approached Madara and then took a bottle of water from a large bag next to him. Naruto uncorked it and began to drink while being watched by Madara. Madara, you've made good progress? Naruto, but you still need to improve your physical condition and further master your chakra control. He said, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I know I still have a long way to go. Believe me, I know it. By the way, you haven't told me how my Sharingan suddenly awakened? He asked, then went back to drinking water. Madara, when you were a Jinchuriki, it seems that the seals that restricted the Kyuubi also restricted your Uchiha blood, and when you were freed from them and ceased to be a Jinchuriki, your Uchiha power began to flow through your body, and it was only a matter of time before you awakened your Sharingan, as you can see. Naruto, I see. I must say the Sharingan is a huge advantage. You're able to see anything in incredible slow motion, allowing you to anticipate and even copy movements. He said, then threw the bottle and walked away to continue his training. White Zetsu, although Naruto has completed these recent training sessions without needing to use the Sharingan. He commented with his typical smile, Naruto, I don't want to rely too much on the Sharingan, but I still use it to learn more, and I even want to take it to 3 Tomo. The more I work on it, the better I'll be able to use it. Although I'm aware that knowledge is important, and that's why I study everything about the Sharingan. He said, then started doing push-ups. Madara, that's correct? Knowledge is very important and is even a very powerful weapon. Sometimes a battle can be won mentally. He said, observing Naruto. Naruto, someone like you would be able to win that way, right? He asked, causing Madara to smile. Madara, Naruto, come here. Naruto started walking towards Madara, who was just watching him. Naruto approached and then saw Madara hand him a necklace that Naruto knew perfectly well. Naruto, that necklace? He said, then picked up the necklace. Madara, you were wearing it when Zetsu found you. This necklace belonged to the first Hokage, Hashirama. How did you get it? Naruto, the granddaughter of the first Hokage and the current Hokage of Konoha, Tsunade Senju, gave it to me. He said, then put on the necklace. Madara, I see. I was thinking of giving you the last gift your grandmother gave me, and I'm sure she would have wanted you to have it. He said, causing a surprise in Naruto. Naruto, a gift? From my grandmother? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara. Yes, Madara placed his hands on his neck and then a necklace appeared that had 3 beautiful stones. One stone with an M, another with an A, and the one in the middle had a K, and behind this were the 3 letters together. Madara gave it to Naruto, who took it and looked at it for a moment. Naruto, my grandmother Akane, my mother Kushina. And you. He said with a small smile, looking at the necklace. Madara, I know I failed you, Naruto. From the moment that village rejected you, I should have gone after you. However, I thought it best to let you choose your own path, and besides, I wanted you to become Hokage. But everything happened so differently. Naruto, don't worry. I was deceived all this time too. I thought that village was my home and that it was the habitat of heroes, but the reality is completely different. I thank you for saving my life and for telling me about my parents and my grandmother. He said, then took off Tsunade's necklace and put on the one Madara had given him. Madara, I can't say I'm happy, but I am proud to have a grandson like you, Naruto. I'm sure you won't fail or betray me, he said while looking at Naruto. Naruto, save those words for when I've revived you and we've completed the infinite Tsukuyomi. He said, then walked away and continued his training. Madara. I hope so, Naruto. To achieve that plan, you must erase all feelings within you and also sever all your ties. Will you be able to do it, Naruto? Can you eliminate every trace of feeling and kindness? Could someone like you be capable of doing that? Asterisk, he thought while observing Naruto. Sunagakure no Sato, village hidden in the sand. The Land of Wind possessed one of the 5 great villages, and for obvious reasons it possessed a Kage, or better known as Kazekage. The village was founded by the first Kazekage, Reto, who gathered all the desert shinobi and put them under his control with his immense power. Another example of how power can allow you to have control over everything and everyone. The village had become possessor of the one-tailed Shikaku. Throughout history, the beast had been sealed in 3 people, the last being Gaara, the next Kazekage. This village had also become feared when the 3rd Kazekage created the Iron Sand. To this day, the 3rd Kazekage is recognized as the strongest in the village of Suna. Sunagakure had also created the Puppet Brigade, in an attempt to give life to their puppets in order to increase their effectiveness in combat. Chiyo, who was one of the oldest and strongest jounin in Suna, had developed the reincarnation of one's own life. However, all of this had been rejected because of the cost you had to pay when using this jutsu, which is giving up your own life. Currently, the village was without a Kage after the death of the 4th Kazekage, Raza. The village had been manipulated by Orochimaru for his selfish desire to destroy Konoha. The council members of Sunagakure had sent apologies to Konoha for what they had done, and although Konoha would not seek revenge, they felt they had failed the alliance they had formed. The alliance still existed, but Konoha didn't fully trust Sunagakure, and that was why Sunagakure wanted to regain that valuable alliance with Konoha. Gaara was the one who would take the position of Kazekage, but they were going to wait at least 2 years before he became Kazekage. If Gaara became the youngest Kazekage in history, and everything went according to plan, he would become Kazekage at the age of 15. Gaara, Temari, Kankuro, Baki, Sasuke and Kakashi were in one of the houses in Sunagakure. Baki, so you'll be training here, he said, looking at Kakashi and Sasuke. Kakashi, yes. It was proposed by the advisors of Suna. You should know that it's to strengthen the alliance between Konoha and Suna. We had been training on the borders of the Land of Fire. The Hokage told us to come here after a few months of training. He said, looking at Baki. Gaara, Sasuke Uchiha. So you decided to return to the village, is it for Naruto? He asked, looking at Sasuke, who maintained a serious expression. Sasuke, I came here to train, not to chat with you guys. Sasuke said, then walk towards the door. I'll walk a bit, Kakashi-sensei. When you're finished here, we can start training. He said, then left the house. Kankuro, as cold and hateful as ever. He said, observing the door where Sasuke had left. Kakashi, he's also very affected by everything. And how are you, Gaara? He asked, looking at Gaara. Gaara, Naruto Uzumaki, was my friend, he said with his head down. Temari, I never thought that boy would end up like this. He was always so loud, but he never gave up. It's definitely quite sad, she said, remembering how loud and energetic Naruto was. Kankuro, it was hard for me to believe too. That boy seemed to be building his path to becoming Hokage. I can't believe he ended up like this, he said, remembering Naruto. Kakashi, Naruto will always be with us, as he always has been, he said with a small smile. Baki, by the way, Kakashi, I heard that Jiraiya-sama will be around here, he said, catching Kakashi's attention. Kakashi, if that's the case, Jiraiya-sama will be with us for at least a few months before returning to Konoha. Baki, I understand. I suppose it's to keep an eye on Sasuke and prevent any of Orochimaru's misdeeds, he said with a small smile. Kakashi, yes, and by the way, you'll be getting a few complaints from some women when Jiraiya-sama is here. I hope you understand, he said, leaving Baki with a confused expression. Kakashi walked to leave the house, leaving Temari, Kankuro, Baki, and Gaara inside. Baki, they both certainly look very upset, he said, looking towards the door. Temari, it's so hard to believe, she said while keeping her gaze lowered. Gaara, Naruto, location unknown. 2 weeks later, Naruto was sitting in front of Madara. Naruto had a restless face as he waited for an answer from Madara. White Zetsu was next to Naruto and Black Zetsu was next to Madara. Madara, so you want to go outside? May I ask why? He asked, looking at Naruto. Naruto, I already told you I need some daylight. Plus I'd like to practice some of my jutsu outside. He explained, looking at Madara. Madara? Your jutsus. And why don't you practice them here? Naruto, because ever since Zetsu brought that scroll with fire jutsus, I've been concentrating a lot on one that I've decided to call Eternal Judgment Phoenix Wings. He said, feeling proud of the name he had given it. Madara? And what's the problem? Naruto, if I use it here it could destroy the hideout, it would be better to test it outside. Also, I want to test the jutsus of my other nature, the wind jutsus, and I'll also try some earth jutsus. Madara. Alright, Zetsu will go with you. Return here in 5 hours at the most. He said, causing Naruto to smile. Naruto. Alright. Don't worry, I'll be here exactly 5 hours later. He said, then grabbed a hoodie with the Uchiha clan symbol on the back. He was wearing black shinobi pants and tall shinobi boots. He put on the hoodie and then walked away with white Zetsu, black Zetsu, so they will travel underground. Madara. With Zetsu, he'll be able to break through the large rock covering the entrance, so he won't have any problem. He said, then sighed. Black Zetsu. Do you want me to keep an eye on him? He asked, looking at Madara. Madara. No, leave it like that. Zetsu is with him. Asterisk, I'm sure Naruto won't escape. Naruto wants to fight someone stronger than a Zetsu clone. Are you really going out to find an opponent, Naruto? Asterisk, fight, death, and a more advanced Sharingan. Zetsu had combined with Naruto's body to allow him to leave the lair. Naruto submerged underground and then emerged, and Zetsu separated from Naruto's body. Naruto watched the daylight hit his eyes. He smiled as he felt the brightness of the sun and the refreshing breeze. He heard birds singing and the leaves of the trees rustling as the wind hit them. Naruto stretched and then began to walk while observing the sky. It had been months since he had seen the beauty of the world. Zetsu was walking beside Naruto. White Zetsu. So where are you going to practice your jutsus? He asked, looking at Naruto. Naruto, we need to find a wide open space, and I'd also like to catch some fish to eat. He said, staring into space. White Zetsu. Okay. So what's the first thing you'll do? Naruto, train, hurry up. Naruto jumped onto a branch and then continued jumping as he flew away. Zetsu just watched him go, sighed, and sank into the ground. Naruto was leaping through the branches, his face showing his excitement. He wanted to try out some jutsu, but above all, he wanted to get outside. He wasn't going to run away, and besides, it would be easy for Madara to find him because of Zetsu, so escaping wouldn't do much good. Furthermore, Naruto didn't even know where he was. Madara had never told him if they were in the Land of Fire, although Naruto knew they were very far from Konoha, and he wouldn't be able to get back since he didn't know his location. He would use this time to test out jutsu, and he also wanted to find an opponent, something that sounds very reckless and impulsive. Naruto kept jumping and then took a great leap and landed on the ground. When he looked up, he was surprised to see that a few meters ahead there was a small village. Naruto frowned. It was obvious that there were no shinobi in that village. None of those who lived there would be able to entertain him for a little while. Zetsu appeared next to Naruto. White Zetsu. So you'll be practicing your jutsus with that village. He said, then smiled. Naruto, of course not. There's no one I can test my skills on. Come on. I hear a waterfall a few meters from here. Maybe we can catch something. He said, then started walking towards where he heard the waterfall. Naruto was walking away when he heard a sound he knew very well. A sound he could recognize at first glance. The sound of two kunai clashing. Naruto turned and jumped onto a branch, beginning to follow the sound. Zetsu just watched Naruto as he walked away again. Zetsu had also heard the kunai, so he already knew where Naruto was going. He submerged himself in the ground. Naruto moved very stealthily, not wanting to be discovered. As he got closer, he could hear voices, about 4 voices. Naruto arrived at the place where the sounds were coming from. There were 3 shinobi there, possibly all 3 were genin. There were 2 boys and a girl, and they wore a headband from Iwagakure and were training. The girl was having a friendly duel with one of the boys. It was clear that the girl was a better shinobi than the boy. She was very agile and dodged every attack the boy made. What's wrong, Arita? You're very slow. the girl said while dodging Arata's attacks. Arata, TSK, shut up, Kyeko. Take this, he said, trying to cut Kyeko with the kunai. However, she dodged it and quickly placed a kunai at Arata's neck. Kyeko, you lost, she said, then walked away and sat next to the other boy. Arata, damn it. Why the hell aren't you fighting her, Hachiro? He asked, looking at the boy. Hachiro, neither you nor I can defeat Kyeko. Confronting her is just a waste of time, he said, then sighed. Naruto watched this with a smile. He had found opponents to test his skills. However, there was something that worried him and now made him react. He had heard 4 voices. He was sure he hadn't made a mistake. Naruto quickly understood. Naruto, they're genin? Where's the jounin? Naruto reacted in a matter of seconds and leaped to the ground a few steps in front of the genin. A huge wave of wind swept away the tree where Naruto was standing. Naruto quickly moved to the side to dodge a kunai that Kyeko had thrown at him. Naruto saw that Arata was gone, turned around, and was met with a kick that Naruto managed to block, but it still sent him flying several meters. Naruto looked back towards the trees and saw a Fuma Shuriken coming towards him. In a matter of milliseconds, Naruto jumped to the side and dodged the Fuma Shuriken. Naruto looked up and saw that Kyeko, Arata, and Hachiro had drawn several shuriken. Naruto was going to prepare to dodge them, but he couldn't move his feet. He looked down and saw a puddle of mud. Do it, said the voice of an older man. Naruto saw that it was the jounin. Kyeko, Arata, and Hachiro threw the shurikens towards Naruto, who looked surprised. But quickly his surprise changed to a smile and his Sharingan was revealed. Naruto quickly pulled out a kunai and deflected all the shurikens, one by one, surprising those present. What great skill, Naruto, Zetsu, Naruto said, and Zetsu emerged from the ground, surprising everyone who began to wonder, what on earth was that? Zetsu combined with Naruto and he submerged into the ground. Hachiro, he disappeared. Arata, if you think I'll believe that? We had it, I fell into the trap. How could everything have changed like this? He said, completely angry. Calm down, Arata, and stay alert. The enemy is near, the jounin said, trying to locate Naruto. Kyeko, Ichiro-sensei, be careful. The jounin turned around and saw Naruto appear behind him with a kunai in hand. The jounin stopped Naruto's attack with a kunai, and then tried to grab Naruto's hand. However, Naruto took a few steps back and then threw 2 shurikens that hit the jounin, but a puff of smoke formed and now it was a log where Naruto's shurikens were. Naruto, the jounin appeared behind Naruto and tried to stab his kunai into Naruto's head. However, he sank back into the ground. Ichiro, TSK, be alert. Ichiro looked up to see his students and noticed that one was missing. Kyeko was not there, and the other 2 were still in shock. Ichiro, what happened? He asked, looking at his 2 students. Arata, he took her away. It all happened so fast. Hachiro, Kyeko. The jounin turned around and standing on a very high branch were Naruto and Kyeko. Kyeko had a kunai at her neck that was being pressed by Naruto. Naruto, I didn't think I'd find someone to test my skills on. I'm glad about that, he said with a smile. Ichiro, damn it. Those eyes, I'm sure that's a Sharingan. That means that kid is an Uchiha. But the Uchiha clan was wiped out and the only living Uchiha is Itachi Uchiha. And he's in Konoha. What's going on here? Naruto, so you knew I was coming? Huh. You almost caught me by surprise, he said with a small smile. Arata, damn it, let her go. Kyeko, wait, I'll save you, he said, then took out 2 kunai and started running towards Naruto and Kyeko. However, his jounin and sensei stood in front of him. Ichiro, calm down, Arata. You need to stay calm, I have a plan, he said in a low voice, causing Arata to calm down. Hachiro, what will we do, Ichiro-sensei? He asked, looking at his sensei. Naruto, hey, what are you all talking about? You should all attack me at once, he said, looking at the 3 of them. Kyeko, what the hell do you want? Are you going to kill us? She asked, tilting her head slightly to look at Naruto. Naruto, of course I won't kill you, I just want to test my skills against your sensei, he said in a low voice just loud enough for Kyeko to hear. Kyeko, You expect me to believe that? She said in a low voice as well. Naruto, well, that depends on you. Erita, you want us to throw shurikens? And what if one hits Keko? He asked in a low voice, looking at his sensei. Ichiro, just do it and tie a lot of string on it, he said, then started running to the side. Erita and Hachiro began throwing shurikens at Naruto, who simply jumped to another branch without letting go of Keko. Naruto leaped to a branch nearby while dodging the shurikens. Naruto turned to see Ichiro, who had jumped to a branch very close to him. The Jonin, with a kunai in one hand and a scroll in the other, leaped towards Naruto's branch. Naruto placed Keko in front of him, but Ichiro didn't stop and began attacking, avoiding Keko and causing Naruto to jump back to the branch he had been on initially. Ichiro jumped to the same branch, but Naruto pushed Keko towards him. Ichiro caught her, but Naruto quickly appeared behind him and stabbed him in the back with a kunai, causing him to explode in a puff of smoke. Naruto, a clone. Naruto looked around for the real one and saw him standing with a smile a few meters away from Erita and Hachiro. Naruto, so the shurikens were just to distract me. Ichiro, now, Ichiro said, and Erita and Hachiro understood the order and pulled the threads that were on the shurikens stuck in the trees. The threads caught Naruto and Keko and stuck them to the tree with Naruto behind Keko. Naruto, TSK. Even so, this is nothing. Ichiro, Keko, hold him, he said, making Keko hold Naruto's hands. Keko, ready Ichiro-sensei. Ichiro smiled at this and then took out a scroll, made a hand seal and from it took out a very long spear. He was going to throw it towards Naruto and Keko, making them both surprised. Keko, what is Ichiro-sensei doing? She asked with a surprised and scared face. Erita, hey, what are you doing? Hachiro, he'll give it to Keko too. Ichiro, that doesn't matter. What does it matter to lose an insignificant life when I can obtain the Sharingan? I'm sure that Tsuchikage will be very happy about this, he said, then threw the spear towards Naruto and Keko. The spear was about to hit Keko and Naruto, however, with great speed. Zetsu came out of the branch and received the spear that pierced his stomach, however. The spear had been thrown with so much force that it made Zetsu fall back and caused the spear to pierce Keko in the stomach and at least part of the tip to stick into Naruto's stomach. Erita, but, damn it, he said, then pulled out a kunai and ran towards his sensei. Ichiro only saw Erita and then dodged his attack. Ichiro grabbed the boy's arm and squeezed it so hard that it made him drop the kunai, then gave him a great kick to the stomach that made Erita spit blood and send him several meters away and be caught by Hachiro to prevent him from crashing into a rock. Ichiro, stupid Erita, you're still a child who doesn't excel at anything, you haven't learned anything. You don't understand the value of what just happened. Keko's sacrifice has granted us the Sharingan. Do you know how important this is for Iwagakure? He said while smiling. Erita, Keko didn't want to sacrifice herself. She thought we were going to save her, he said, looking at Ichiro. Hachiro, Erita is right, you said you had a plan and we followed it because we thought it would save Keko. Ichiro, they're still children. Stop worrying about others, the most important thing is the village. Keko's life isn't worth getting so worked up about, he said while observing his students. White Zetsu, Naruto, are you all right? He asked, maintaining his typical smile. Naruto, I think so. He spoke, then frowned at the pain he felt from the spear's edge. Untie me, Zetsu. Another Zetsu appeared next to Naruto and cut the threads, surprising Ichiro and the others. The other Zetsu, who had been pierced by the spear, walked to get out of it and sank into the ground. Keko fell and was about to fall from the branch, but Naruto grabbed her arm, preventing her from falling. Naruto picked her up and jumped to the ground with Keko in his arms. Naruto saw Keko and realized she was already dead. Naruto knew she wasn't ready to die yet, and she didn't want to die either. Just before the spear struck her, Naruto heard Keko's last word. Mother! That was the last word Keko said. Naruto broke the tip of the spear and pulled it out of Keko's stomach. He placed it on the ground. Naruto stood up, his eyes closed. Ichiro walked over and stood a few steps away from Naruto. Ichiro, that white thing saved your life? Even so, the spear still managed to hurt him. He thought, seeing that he had a wound on his stomach caused by the tip of the spear. Naruto, she was your student. She thought you were going to save her," he said while keeping his eyes closed. "Ichiro, so what? Do you think her life is worth so much that you're sad about it? What matters here is that you have the Sharingan. That's something I'm sure that Tsuchikage will want." The man said, then smiled. "Naruto, what your Tsuchikage will have is your corpse," he said, then opened his eyes and a 3-Tomo Sharingan was revealed, surprising Ichiro. "Ichiro, his Sharingan has changed." Naruto drew 2 kunai and quickly threw them at the Jonin, who deflected them with his own kunai. Ichiro was then surprised to see Naruto move with incredible speed and now stand directly in front of him. He tried to strike Ichiro with the kunai, but Naruto ducked and dodged the attack, then kicked Ichiro in the feet, sending him sprawling. Ichiro quickly got to his feet and jumped back. He looked up and saw that Naruto was no longer in front of him. Ichiro spun around and saw a kunai very close to his right eye. He managed to take a step back, but still sustained a severe injury, a cut running from his forehead to the lower right side of his face. Ichiro jumped back and with his left eye saw Naruto standing a few steps ahead, kunai in hand, his face impassive. "Ichiro, damn it, I completely lost sight in my right eye. If I hadn't taken that step back, the cut would have reached my neck and could have been fatal. He thought as he covered his right eye with his hand. Blood ran down Ichiro's face. The cut had undoubtedly been deep. Naruto made hand seals and then stopped at the tiger seal and then jumped to a branch and continued jumping from branch to branch. Ichiro saw as Naruto walked away and then began to follow him. "Ichiro, he's escaping? But why would he do that?" he thought as he followed Naruto. Suddenly Naruto jumped to another branch and landed in front of Ichiro, who stopped on a branch. "Naruto, fire style, eternal judgment phoenix wings," he whispered, then took a deep breath. Naruto then unleashed a huge wave of flames that covered a large diameter and burned trees as it advanced at great speed towards Ichiro, who was surprised but quickly made hand seals. Ichiro, earth style, earth wall. A large wall of earth formed in front of Ichiro, who smiled, believing that the wall would stop the wave of flames. However, when the flames touched the wall, it swept away everything, including Ichiro, who could not react in time and was consumed by the flames, which continued to advance a few more meters before stopping. Naruto sighed and saw the great destruction his jutsu had caused. It was undoubtedly an A-rank jutsu. Naruto deactivated his Sharingan and Zetsu appeared beside him. "White Zetsu, so this was the jutsu you wanted to try?" he asked, looking at Naruto, who had an impassive face. "Naruto, yes, Naruto taught me." Naruto walked with an impassive face through the destruction his jutsu had caused. The damage that fire jutsu had inflicted was incredible. Madara had told Naruto that the key to every jutsu was having perfect control of your chakra. And although that was difficult for Naruto, given how much chakra he possessed, he still persevered and gradually gained better control. Another thing Madara had told Naruto was the coldness with which he should use each jutsu. Madara said that hesitation makes you weak, and therefore, remaining cold and determined can make you very strong, and your jutsus will be proof of that. Naruto had been cold and resolute, but only to a certain extent. After all, the reason he'd decided to back away was to prevent the jutsu from harming the genin. One of them had already died, and the last thing he wanted was to be responsible for the death of an innocent person. He continued walking and suddenly stopped when he saw a kunai being thrown that only grazed his forehead. Naruto moved to the side and saw Ichiro. The man was completely unrecognizable. His face was burned, as was his hair and his upper clothing. Both his arms were burned, and he could barely move them. The man was sitting, leaning against a small rock. "Ichiro, why you'll go with me? I'll take you to the Tsuchikage," the man said without lifting his face or anything. Only his voice could be heard. "Naruto, even in that state your greed doesn't die. I thought someone in that state would be more worried about recovering or would be asking for their life to end immediately so as not to continue suffering." Naruto turned around and saw the kunai that Ichiro had thrown at him stuck in a tree. He walked over and pulled it out of the tree, then turned to look at Ichiro. "Naruto, I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't want that girl to die, but you're the one to blame. I'm sure you only wanted the Sharingan to gain more military power and go to war. You really don't care about making children and innocent people suffer because of your absurd lust for power and your stupid wars. You and your Tsuchikage are just a small example of what this world is like. That girl had a mother waiting for her at home, and all she'll get is a news report saying she died serving the village with honor. That's all garbage. Your Tsuchikage is garbage. You're garbage, so I have no reason to show you mercy, he said, and just as he was about to throw the kunai, Ichiro, no, don't do it. I have a daughter and a wife, he said, then began to cry. Naruto, don't worry. They'll continue living without trash like you. Besides, you should have thought that girl also had a family. I'll take your coldness and now. Naruto threw the kunai with great force and it stuck in Ichiro's forehead and almost pierced his head. Ichiro fell to the ground and was obviously already dead. Naruto continued to look at the man's corpse for a moment and then began to walk towards where the genin were. Next to Naruto appeared Zetsu with a smile on his face as is typical of him. White Zetsu, you defeated him, you should be proud of having defeated a jounin, he said, then looked at Naruto. Naruto, I just wanted to test my skills, so I'm not proud of having tested them on him, he said in a serious tone. White Zetsu, and then, Naruto, I feel proud of having killed him. As soon as those words left Naruto's mouth, they caused a surprise in Zetsu. White Zetsu, so that means you don't feel bad about taking a life. You know you killed a person, right? He asked because Naruto had previously mentioned that he didn't like killing people. Naruto, that guy wasn't a person, he was a monster who was only polluting the world, and I decided to eliminate that trash, he said, maintaining an impassive face. White Zetsu, I understand, and now what will you do with the boys? Naruto, I can't do anything for them, I can't revive people, he said, then sighed. Naruto and Zetsu arrived where Arata, Hachiro, and the deceased Keko were. Naruto approached and saw the two boys crying as they wrapped Keko in bandages to carry her away. Naruto decided to stay behind some bushes and simply watched as the two boys walked away with Keko. Naruto would be lying if he said he didn't feel bad. He truly felt terrible about what had happened. He had experienced firsthand how a man's lust for power had led to the death of a girl brimming with dreams and hopes. Someone whose biggest mistake was trusting her sensei, trusting that he would save her because they were from the same village. However, that trust is worthless when it comes to obtaining something that will help you surpass your rivals. That man wanted the Sharingan to give his village military power. Anyone would say that Ichiro is the greedy one. However, it is evident that this man's greed comes from the teachings he received in his village. Once again, Naruto realized the corruption that exists in the villages, and this only served to make Naruto realize that this world needed an urgent change. Naruto just watched as Hachiro and Arata walked away with Keko's body without waiting for their sensei. After all, they no longer trusted him. He had taken away a very important friend from them. It was to be expected that those boys wouldn't worry about whatever happened to him. Zetsu, who was standing next to Naruto, thought that perhaps Naruto wanted to return to the hideout. White Zetsu, do you want to go back? He said, looking at Naruto, whose gaze was lost in nothingness. Naruto, first I want to practice other jutsus, besides we haven't gone fishing yet, he said, then started walking followed by Zetsu. Konohagakure no Sato, Hidden Leaf Village. It's still difficult for some people to move on after learning of Naruto's death. One of them was Sakura, who was walking with a dejected expression. She didn't seem to have a destination in mind, yet she kept going, perhaps just to clear her mind a little. Sakura looked up for a moment and saw Hinata ahead, and beside her, Niji and Tenten on the other side. They seemed to be comforting Hinata, well, at least Tenten was, since Niji was worried but also seemed affected. Sakura approached her friends. Sakura, hi guys. How are you? She asked, making the three of them look at her. Hinata, hello Sakura-san. Well, I guess she said in her typical shy tone. Tenten, as you can see here, not so well, and you Sakura? Sakura, I think so too. All of this has been difficult. She spoke with a sad expression. Hinata, Naruto-kun. He was always there encouraging us, he talked all the time about becoming Hokage. She said. Then tears started to flow. Sakura, yes. It was kinda silly, but he would never abandon a friend in need. That was Naruto, she said, then smiled as she remembered Naruto and his pranks. Neji, can destiny be changed? He made me believe that destiny can be changed if you wish it, but now that he's dead. Neji couldn't finish because he heard a voice that everyone immediately recognized. That's not true. Everyone turned to look at Rock Lee, who was wearing his full outfit except for the Konoha headband. Everyone, Reed, Lee, why are you acting like this? Have you forgotten what Naruto taught us? Sakura, if you truly value Naruto so much, instead of acting like this all the time, you should start training to prevent losing another teammate in the future. Naruto never turned his back on a comrade and fought to protect his bonds. Do the same. Hinata, you said that Naruto was able to awaken that